Chapter 1103. Yi Qinghan was neither servile nor overbearing as he looked at the second sorcerer god on the same level. His words made it clear that he would not allow anyone to touch Kuang's own. So what if it was his own son? The second sorcerer god narrowed his eyes as he looked at Yi Qinghan. He knew that Yi Qinghan was no longer the young child that he could control. Yi Qinghan's growth had far surpassed his own. Even if he still had some advantages, he could no longer suppress him. "I didn't misjudge you," the second sorcerer god said hoarsely. "I hope Senior won't misjudge me in the future," Yi Qinghan warned. Their voices were filled with hostility as they warned and probed each other. The serpent Shenjiao, Nangong Yunlan, and the others were confused. They didn't understand why the two of them, who were supposed to be working together, would suddenly become so hostile. However, Yi Qinghan and the second sorcerer god understood that they were just using each other. However, both of them were cunning people, so it was difficult to fully exploit each other. "My judgment has never been wrong." The second sorcerer god smiled and said, "I've given you such a big favor, allowing you to form a relationship with the Black Dragon. I wonder how much of this benefit I'll get?" The second sorcerer god went straight to the point. He did not want to lose this benefit. Yi Qinghan stared at the second sorcerer god and frowned. "Senior, what are your chances of escaping back to the Chaosverse with the Black Dragon Egg? What are your chances of surviving the pursuit of the Black Dragon and the ferocious beasts of the Eternal Cloud Sky?" "I have a 50% chance of leaving the Eternal Cloud Sky. As long as I enter the chaotic universe, I have a 100% chance of surviving." The second sorcerer god's aura changed. He felt that Yi Qinghan was going to renege on his promise. 50% chance? Yi Qinghan snorted and said seriously, "I thought you didn't even have a 30% chance. The Black Dragon Egg is the essence of the Black Dragon's life. Once you prepare to leave the Eternal Cloud Sky, it will choose to perish together with you. So, you're not giving me a favor, I'm saving your life. So you're saying that I won't get any benefits?" The second sorcerer god was a little angry. His aura rose as he asked coldly, "2 supreme-grade sacred herbs of life. Take it as a token of respect from this junior to you and senior Python Shenjiao." Yi Qinghan was very relaxed. He did not want to offend the second sorcerer god and win over the serpent god, so he made the promise. I was right about you. Within 30 years, I hope to see a supreme-level sacred elixir of life." After the second sorcerer god finished speaking, he glanced at the serpent and dashed towards the blood ditch together. The poisonous gas in the blood gully wasn't a threat to these two peak experts. Hating didn't even dare to come out and attack them, allowing them to pass through. Nangong Yunlan finally understood. It was no wonder that Yi Qinghan was willing to cooperate with the Supreme Holy Land. It turned out that both he and the second sorcerer god were hiding daggers behind their smiles. They were using each other and would fall out with each other for the sake of resources. Yi Qinghan looked at the three dumbfounded people and said indifferently, "I'm a person who clearly distinguishes between kindness and hatred. To my brothers, I'm willing to go through fire and water. To my collaborators, I'm only interested in benefits. To my enemies, I only talk about strength. Brother Nangong, I hope that we can be brothers, not collaborators, and definitely not enemies." Nangong Yunlan nodded and cupped his fists. "My tribe is sincere in cooperating with you. Nangong Yunlan is sincere in this friendship. Yi Qinghan, you're so cool. Even my tribe leader doesn't dare to speak to the second sorcerer god like this. How dare you be so impolite?" Nangong Aoshue's face was flushed red. She was extremely excited. This was the first time she saw the younger generation offending the older generation of the Holy Land. Yi Qinghan's eyes flashed coldly and he shook his head. He would not be at peace with the sorcerer tribe, nor would he compromise with the demon god mountain. Although they cooperated in the early stages, they would definitely kill each other in the later stages. The second sorcerer god understood this, and the demon god mountain definitely understood it even more. The 30 lives of the crazy sect would not be lost in vain. "Let's go back." Yi Qinghan took a deep breath and crossed the blood ravine, entering the evil spirit mountain. The three of them followed closely behind. Without He Teng's interference, The blood ravine was not much of a threat. The four of them rushed out of the Evil Spirit Mountain and returned to the South Horizon region. Currently, the South Horizon region was vigorously searching for resources. Although the major cities were secretly competing with each other, there were no more wars. The people of the South Horizon region were no longer suffering. Their lives were 100 times better than before. Everyone revered Yi Qinghan and thanked Yi Qinghan. If it wasn't for him, this kind of campaign would have lasted for a long time. The flags of the crazy sect fluttered above the major cities. When the second sorcerer god and the serpent god passed by, they did not plunder the resources here. It was clear that they did not want to be enemies with Yi Qinghan. The resources in the cities were piled up like mountains. Spirit herbs and precious medicines were all placed separately. Every city had about the same amount of resources, and there were quite a few cities that had found godly metal. Although the grade of the metal wasn't bad, it was far from what Yi Qinghan wanted. When Yi Qinghan arrived at the Thundercloud City, the city lord Lei Baotian personally came to welcome him. He was stunned by the three experts beside Yi Qinghan. Only then did he realize that they were just natives and could not be considered as true experts. Gather the 18 city lords and bring all the resources above the high god level. As for the resources below, leave them for your own development. Yi Qinghan said calmly. Yes. Lei Baotian replied respectfully. Very soon, Lei Baotian contacted the various city lords. The 18 powerful overgods all brought the resources and rushed to the Thundercloud City. They were also stunned by Nangong Yunlan and the others. They were even more stunned by Nangong Aoshue. Yi Qinghan judged according to the resources and the death rate of each party. The death rate in the Thundercloud City was the lowest, but the resources were the most. He gave Lei Baotian the most suitable and powerful lightning secret technique. The others were each rewarded with a overgod-level divine technique. All of them were extremely powerful. The experts were dumbfounded by these divine techniques. They revered Yi Qinghan even more and did not dare to disobey him. Develop the South Horizon region well. I need geniuses. I need true experts. Set up an academy and teach the elites for free. As long as you find an elite that satisfies me, I will reward you with another divine technique. It will only be stronger than the current one. Yi Qinghan gazed at everyone and said in a deep voice, Yes, sir. Lei Baotian and the others replied excitedly. Treat your people well because they are my people. If I find out who dares to wantonly enslave their people, I will throw you into the blood ditch in the depths of Evil Spirit Mountain. Yi Qinghan warned sternly. No one dared to refute and nodded. I will build a super long-distance teleportation array in the Nantian region that can reach the main sect of the insane sect. If there's anything you can't solve, you can report it to Lei Baotian and go directly to the insane sect through the teleportation array. In addition, in a few days, I will send an expert to take charge of the Nantian region. He will be holding my decree, and his name will be Luojia. He will be the domain master. Lei Baotian might have a bad temper and looked like a bore, but he was meticulous and knew how to cater to others. At this moment he was the first to stand up and express his willingness to assist Luojia. The others did not dare to say anything. From this moment on, the South Horizon region was under the insane sect. Chapter 1104. Yi Qinghan reorganized the South Horizon region and worked together with Nangong Yunlan to build two large gates. One led to the Azura region and the other led to the Holy Land. It was all for the convenience of entering the Wangu Yuntian. On the second day, Yi Qinghan, Nangong Yunlan, and the others returned to their respective homes. Yi Qinghan returned to the Azura region and found a desolate dead mountain to start refining the giant divine weapon. The Holy Land was a paradise. Immortal chi lingered in the air, divine beasts flew around, and birds flew in the sky. However, they had lost their ferocity and mingled with the creatures of the Holy Land. Nangong Yunlan and her siblings returned to a city in the sky. The city was like a celestial mountain, and there was only a pillar at the bottom. It was 100,000 li in radius, and it was very harmonious. Immortal children laughed and fairies danced. When they saw the return of Nangong Yunlan and her siblings, they hurriedly rushed over. Brother, sister, I improved again. "Brother, look at me, I broke through." The children surrounded them as if they were presenting treasures, showing off their cultivation. There were also innocent children showing off their clothes. Their souls were so pure that people couldn't bear to hurt them. Nangong Yunlan smiled and nodded. She led the group of children back to the city in the sky. She returned to the Holy Land alone and went straight to the shrine. In the shrine, there were a few elders standing. They were all supreme elders of the Holy Land, and their cultivation was terrifying. They were almost at the end of their lifespan, and there wasn't much time left. At this moment, they were all frowning. When they saw Nangong Yunlan return, they finally heaved a sigh of relief. "Yunlan, you have always been calm. Why are you so muddle-headed this time? You brought Yuneo and Aoshue to the Wangu Yuntion. If something happens, where will you put the Holy Land?" The supreme overlord of the Holy Land, Nangong Bat-Yin, reprimanded angrily. Nangong Yunlan was very calm and didn't quibble. She only said in a low voice, "Holy Lord, I wanted to save the situation of the Holy Land, so I had no choice but to take the risk. Otherwise, I wouldn't have brought my siblings to the Wangu Yuntion." "Then you should have brought the clan elder to protect you. I thought you guys wouldn't be able to come back." Nangong Bat-Yin was very angry. This was purely out of worry. Nangong Yunlan and her siblings were the only fruits of the Holy Land. Nothing must happen to them. "Holy Lord, don't be angry. I found a way out." Nangong Yunlan slightly bowed and said, "A way out? What do you mean?" Nangong Bat-Yin and several other powerful clan elders raised their eyebrows as they looked at Nangong Yunlan and asked curiously. "I met Yi Qinghan, the leader of the insane sect, in the Wangu Cloud Sky. I've been following him all the way to the Wangu Cloud Sky in search of opportunities, and we had a great time working together. He agreed to cooperate with my supreme holy ground, and at the very least, take down one of the entrances to the Wangu Cloud Sky. He even gifted my clan a set of supreme-grade golden armor, a supreme-grade giant divine weapon, a supreme-grade divine herb, purple gold mysterious grass, and 4 9 heavens divine lotus seeds." Nangong Yunlan said excitedly. Although Nangong Bat-Yin was pleasantly surprised, he also frowned. Yi Qinghan was not someone who liked to give out benefits. If he was willing to give so much, he would definitely want more. "What does he want?" Nangong Bat-Yin asked in a low voice. Nangong Yunlan took a deep breath and continued, "If we cooperate and win one of the entrances, we will share it. We will provide 10 drops of supreme divine power. If we win 2 entrances, each side will have 1, and we will provide them with 20 drops of supreme divine power. Moreover, we will form an alliance. I believe that he will bring about a change in the situation for my supreme holy ground." Nangong Bat-Yin and the others were stunned by Yi Qinghan's exorbitant demand. After so many years, the supreme holy ground had only used up 30 drops of supreme divine power. Yi Qinghan wanted 20 drops of supreme divine power. His appetite was really big. "You agree?" one of the clan elders asked in a serious tone. Nangong Yunlan replied firmly. The shrine was silent for a long time. Nangong Yunlan did not say anything. Whether they could cooperate or not still depended on the clan elders and the sacred leader. If they did not agree, Nangong Yunlan could only return everything she had obtained. She would definitely not take advantage of Yi Qinghan. After a long time, Nangong Bat-Yin looked at Nangong Yunlan and asked hoarsely, "How much do you know about Yi Qinghan? Can you trust him? If we give up so much and get nothing in return, it will only speed up the demise of the holy ground. He is very strong. I have exhausted all my resources, but I am still not his match. This is his strength. His insane sect supports him. He is the pillar of their soul. This is his charisma. He is willing to sacrifice himself for his brothers. He is willing to avenge the 30 dead disciples of the insane sect. He is willing to become enemies with the demon god mountain and the sorcerer tribe. This is his principle and bottom line. I trust him." Nangong Yunlan said with certainty. "He also has a grudge with the sorcerer tribe?" Nangong Bat-Yin asked in surprise. On the way back, he met the second sorcerer god. He almost fought with Yi Qinghan, but both sides restrained themselves. Nangong Yunlan explained. After that, Nangong Bat-in asked Nangong Yunlan to leave the shrine first. The clan elders discussed in the shrine, discussing whether to cooperate with Yi Qinghan. Nangong Yunlan did not dare to guarantee that this would work, but there was a good chance. The supreme holy ground had been forced into a corner. If they did not cooperate, the holy ground would definitely decline. In the end, they would lose all their resources and be ruthlessly trampled to death by the other holy grounds. In the Azura region, a barren mountain range was directly burned into nothingness by the fire. It continued to collapse. Yi Qinghan's soul was divided into several parts. He controlled the reincarnation divine iron. Day after day, the 9 dragon roots supported him with divine power. He did not know fatigue. At the same time, he controlled several divine weapons to take shape. There were sabers, swords, axes, and all kinds of divine weapons. The crimson reincarnation divine iron absorbed all the mysteries in the world. It was filled with the aura of chaos and contained his blood essence. When the purple gold divine liquid was poured into it, the powerful divine weapon exuded a terrifying aura even before it took shape. Day after day, the temperature of the entire Azura region rose. No one dared to go near the barren land. The little golden crow occasionally flew into the sky and let out a long cry that shook the mountains and rivers. The phenomenon of heaven and earth attracted the attention of many major forces, but no one dared to go to the Azura region. Emperor Yi and the others retreated to the Azura region 5 months before the battle. They looked at the barren volcanic mountain range and saw the divine weapons taking shape one after another. They were all extremely excited. A Guqin soared into the sky. The frame of the Guqin was actually made of the purple gold divine wolf king's fangs, purple gold profound iron, and purple gold divine liquid. The bowstring was made of the Guqin silk transformed from the reincarnation divine iron. It was bathed in dragon blood and its divine aura was earth-shattering, causing the sound of nature to resound. Emperor Yi flew into the sky and flicked his finger. 2 drops of blood essence flew out from his forehead and rushed towards the Guqin. 1 drop of blood essence from the Chaos Dragon and the other drop of blood from the heart vein. When they touched the reincarnation divine zither, they were directly absorbed. The divine zither merged with her, and she could control the vast and mighty sound of the Guqin from a distance. Hummed at the purest sound of nature caused the world to fall into a deathly silence. It was as if this was the only sound in the world. It caused people to be addicted and unable to extricate themselves. Chapter 1105. The heavenly sound of the zither was vast and mighty, crushing the heavens. The Shura region fell into silence. The divine zither floated in the air, exuding reincarnation and celestial chi. Emperor Yi stood beside the zither, his white hair fluttering in the wind. His jade-like hands stroked the zither strings, and the melodious zither music filled the air. Yi Qinghan waved his hand and a set of golden armor and golden gloves appeared beside Emperor Yi. This set of armor and gloves had been made with a large amount of purple gold meteoric iron and divine liquid. The quality was much better than his own. Emperor Ye's defense was not as good as Yi Qinghan's. Naturally, he had to put in a lot of effort to ensure Emperor Ye's safety. Emperor Yi waved his hand and put on the golden armor. The purple robe was piercingly cold, and as his white hair danced, he looked like a goddess. His jade-like fingers were protected by the golden gloves, and the recoil of the zither's power could no longer harm him. Emperor Yi smiled like a flower. He liked this divine zither very much, but he liked the golden armor and gloves even more. "Thank you, master," Emperor Yi said with a smile. Yi Qinghan smiled in return. He flew to Emperor Yi and said gently, "You don't have to thank me." Emperor Yi nodded and said no more. Yi Qinghan looked at the people outside and waved his hand to throw out more than 10 treasure-level giant divine weapons. There were spears, divine swords, giant axes, everything that one could think of. A large amount of divine iron and meteoric iron was wasted, and half of the purple gold meteoric iron was consumed. In the end, these 13 treasures were made, and Zixian also got a very handy divine sword. Everyone received a divine weapon, golden armor, and golden gloves. A perfect set of divine armor, and their combat power more than doubled. They were all overjoyed. Yi Qinghan was even happier. These divine weapons not only increased Guangzong's combat power, but also helped him improve rapidly in refining divine weapons. In just a dozen days, he had improved by 30%, and his explosive power increased by 20%. Yi Qinghan's explosive power was already terrifying to begin with, and with the addition of Yi Qinghan's power, his battle prowess would definitely double. "Let's go back and prepare for the battle," Yi Qinghan said with a smile. Everyone was excited. This gamble would affect the future development of the Guangzong. Even if they knew that there would be casualties, they were still willing to fight. Yi Qinghan brought everyone back to the insane sect. He went straight to the army commander, Roger, and ordered him to go to the South Horizon region to train the army and talents. It could be considered as adding elites to the insane sect. Roger brought 100 members of the Azura squad, as well as some artificers and alchemists, and opened the Azura region's domain gate to enter the South Horizon region. Many years later, the South Horizon region would definitely develop into a great domain that did not belong to the Azura region. Jiang Jingtian and the others went into seclusion as soon as they returned to the wild sect. They cultivated the great desolate imprisoning heavenly finger in preparation for the battle. Just as Yi Qinghan was preparing to cultivate for a while, Nangong Yunlan arrived. Outside the insane sect, Nangong Yunlan handed Yi Qinghan 5 drops of supreme divine power without hesitation. She said happily, "My ancestor has agreed to cooperate. These 5 drops of supreme divine power are the down payment, but he hopes to meet you." Yi Qinghan nodded. It was only right for him to meet her. He then left the endless galaxy with Nangong Yunlan. The two sped along the way from the Azura region to the Six Paths domain, and after a few more turns, they finally arrived at the Supreme Saint Grounds. Upon entering the Saint Grounds, Yi Qinghan understood what it meant to have a strong foundation. The Saint Grounds and the insane sect were on a completely different level. If it were not for Gu Qingyu and the other super experts, the insane sect would have been destroyed by the Saint Grounds easily. When they arrived at the temple, the Saint Lord and several clan elders of the Saint Grounds were all present. They all stared at Yi Qinghan as if they could not wait to see through him. Yi Qinghan cupped his fists and bowed. He said respectfully, "Junior Yi Qinghan greets Lord Saint Lord and seniors. Have a seat. We called you here because we want to get to know you. Consider it as a pre-cooperation. That way, we can rest assured," Saint Lord Nangong Badian said in a low voice. Yi Qinghan sat beside Nangong Yunlan and looked straight at the elders. He didn't show the slightest bit of fear or guilt. "Sacred Lord, seniors, Brother Yunlan and I can be considered friends who have gone through life and death together. Naturally, I will not harm him. This cooperation is for a win-win situation. If we fail, we will both suffer losses. I will not use my fate to harm the Supreme Holy Land," Yi Qinghan said seriously. "And this old man understands your growth process. In just a short 10,000 years, you have grown to this extent. This old man is ashamed." Nangong Beishan's aura swept through the entire temple. In terms of combat power, he was definitely stronger than the current second-generation sorcerer god. However, if the second-generation sorcerer god recovered, he would be stronger than him. My Supreme Saint Grounds has been lacking in talents for the past few years. We only have Yunlan as an outstanding figure. We do indeed need to cooperate with the insane sect. Hence, we are sincere. Otherwise, we would not waste so much Supreme God energy. Hence, I hope Brother Yi can understand. When we get the entrance, I hope the two of us can enter the Wangu cloud sky together and split the resources in half," Nangong Badian continued after a moment of silence. Yi Qinghan's brows twitched. Splitting everything in half? That was equivalent to letting the Supreme Saint Grounds take advantage of them. "Senior." Yi Qinghan was prepared to reject Nangong Beishan's request. Nangong Badian raised his hand and said, "Sect Lord Yi, don't be anxious. I took advantage of you, so I naturally have to make up for it. Other than the Supreme Sword Scripture, you can choose any other sacred art of my Supreme Saint Grounds." This Yi Qinghan sucked in a breath of cold air. This Nangong Badian was really daring. A Saint Grounds inheritance, other than the Supreme Sword Scripture, was actually willing to share any other secret art. What did the insane sect lack? Wasn't that what they lacked? I hope that Sect Lord Yi can help the Supreme Saint Grounds tide over this era of lack of talents. Our Supreme Saint Grounds can also help you enter the top tier of power and be on par with the Saint Grounds. A win-win situation. Sect Lord Yi, why don't you consider it? Nangong Batian said in a deep voice. Yi Qinghan grinned and nodded. Since Lord Saint Ground has said so, if this junior still doesn't agree, wouldn't that be unappreciative of your kindness? Since that's the case, let's sign the contract. Nangong Batian waved his hand and signaled to a clan elder. It was obvious that they had already reached an agreement and believed that Yi Qinghan would definitely agree. Yi Qinghan looked at the contract briefly. Overall, it was all about mutual assistance. Although the Supreme Saint Grounds had taken some advantage, it was understandable. After all, the supreme divine power was something that could only be encountered and not sought. It was something that couldn't be exchanged for even if one had supreme treasures. Yi Qinghan waved his hand and pressed down on the blood contract. The alliance between the two sides was officially working together. However, they didn't announce it to the world. Instead, they wanted to catch the other Saint Grounds off guard. Only then would they be able to snatch one or two entrances. After signing the blood contract, Yi Qinghan joined forces with the Saint Lord and the clan elder to create a domain gate that led directly to the Azura domain. The Azura domain was the gateway to the insane sect. There were no ultra-long distance domain gates in the Endless Star System. Anyone who wanted to attack the Endless Star System would have to enter the Azura domain first. This way, the insane sect would have a longer time to prepare. After the domain gate was completed, Yi Qinghan used it to directly enter the Azura domain. He entered the Azura sect and went into seclusion to wait for the battle half a year later. Chapter 1106. In the Azura region, colorful clouds appeared in the sky. The aura of desolation permeated the air, shrouding the mountains and rivers. It was as if everything had returned to the desolate era before the primal chaos. The pressure was so terrifying that even the birds did not dare to fly. The number of spies in the surroundings suddenly increased. The Azura region's army was in a tight formation. Even Lu Outyen, Xiaqiue, and several other armies had been mobilized. The ancient massacre god's 30,000 men were stationed outside the Azura sect. Inside the Azura sect, there were also 300 little Azura teams. Something big seemed to have happened in the Azura sect. No one was allowed to go near. In the back mountain of the sect, the aura of desolation was even thicker. Yi Qinghan crossed his hands and formed a strange seal. The power of desolation in his body was almost on par with the primal chaos power. The Great Desolation Seal was like a black hole, transforming the primal chaos power into the power of desolation. The Great Desolation Monument trembled constantly. The runes on it filled his sea of consciousness, revealing a secret divine ability. Heaven Desolation Technique. 3 ancient words appeared on the Great Desolation Monument. They were difficult to understand. Yi Qinghan did not recognize these 3 words, but he could feel the terrifying destructive power contained within them. Swish. Yi Qinghan's pupils looked. The Great Desolation Monument appeared in front of him. There was a tiny person forming seals on it. It was using a divine ability. It should be the Heaven Desolation Technique. Yi Qinghan learned it. His hands drew a reverse 8-trigram seal in front of his chest. His body soared into the sky, forming seals faster and faster, commanding the power of desolation in the world. Boom, boom, boom. The world rumbled and the desolation danced. The tiny person on the Great Desolation Monument also sped up. Yi Qinghan could clearly feel that once the seal was formed, it could cause the world to age and everything to return to nothingness. Whoosh! Yi Qinghan's figure flashed and soared into the sky, leaving the Azura region. The stars moved as he pierced through the clouds and appeared 10,000 miles away. He sped all the way to the extreme north. It was a snowy area. Besides snow trees, snow wolves, and other creatures of the extreme north, there was nothing else. Boom! The Great Wastelands monolith sat on the snowy mountain and grew to a height of 10,000 feet. The tiny figure on top of it also grew in size and looked majestic. Every move of the tiny figure could cause all Dharma to follow it and the great Tao to wail. An extremely difficult seal was formed. The tiny figure on the great wasteland's steel seemed to be about to break free from its shackles. Its movements were exactly the same as Yi Qinghan's. A palm descended from the sky. The world was desolate, and its aura soared into the Milky Way. Wherever it passed, snow danced in the air, and mountains and rivers trembled. The frigid waters surged for 3,000 miles. Boom! Howled in a split second, the mountains collapsed and the earth cracked. The cedar trees that could have survived for countless years withered and became barren. Even the sky was about to collapse. The snow wolves howled and howled, but before they could finish, their powerful vitality was forcefully taken away and they died on the spot. The Heavenly Wastelands technique. When cultivated to the extreme, it can cause time to flow rapidly. Even the heavenly Tao can age. Yi Qinghan withdrew his hand and stood proudly beside the great wasteland steel. That palm had consumed almost 40% of his strength. Even with the support of the 9 dragon roots, he could not use a terrifying secret technique like the Heavenly Wastelands technique without limit. Yi Qinghan was silent. He secretly recalled the time when he used the Heavenly Wastelands technique. The God of Wastelands technique circulated in his body. He wanted to improve it again and increase his explosive strength. In the snowy mountain, Yi Qinghan performed the same seal day after day, month after month. He constantly improved and improved. His explosive strength increased, but the God of Wastelands technique consumed decreased. A day of cultivation in the snowy mountain was 1,000 years in the outside world. Yi Qinghan forgot about the passage of time, but time passed quickly outside. Half a year passed in the blink of an eye. Jiang Jingtian, Li Feng, and the others had already come out of seclusion. Their cultivation had improved by leaps and bounds. They were all wearing golden armor and supreme-grade supreme giant divine weapons. More than 10 of them had gathered at the Azura sect, waiting for Yi Qinghan to come out of seclusion. The 21 Holy Lands had already finished their preparations. They had gathered their strongest elites to compete for the entrance to the Wangu Yuntian. In the center of the chaotic universe, in Blue Sky City, the small factions had all been expelled. The various Holy Lands and powerful factions controlled the city. They each occupied a piece of land and set up camp. After all, the gambling match would not end in a day or two. This group of monstrous geniuses, invincible kings, could last for many days. Holy Lands were constantly being teleported to the outside of Blue Sky City through the coordinates. The desolate aura within a radius of 10,000 miles suddenly became much denser. Blue Sky City, which was originally like a fairyland, was peaceful and tranquil. But after today, it was destined that the land would be bathed in blood and the sky would be dyed red. Supreme Empyrean Holy Lands Patriarch Nangong Batin personally led a group of 4, Nangong Yunlan, Nangong Yuneo, and Aoshua. The other clan elders were left behind to guard the Holy Lands headquarters. Many Holy Lands looked at the Supreme Empyrean Holy Lands. They did not have the support of their subordinate factions' elites, and they only had one God's Son. At most, they only had Nangong Yuneo and Nangong Aoshua. How could they compete with the other Holy Lands for resources? Holy Lord Nangong, why struggle like this? Just the 3 of them want to get a share of the Wangu Yuntian's resources? I advise you to preserve their lives and give up. Karma Holy Land's Holy Lord Ji Tian Changkong said disdainfully. Holy Lord Nangong, could it be that you are cooperating with the sorcerer race or demon god mountain? Coming over to give them a show of force? Fellow Taoist, you might as well submit to my space-time Holy Land. Once my clan obtains the entrance, we will give you 10% of the resources. The space-time Holy Land's Holy Lord laughed. Nangong Batian was indifferent. He did not accept their provocation and only quietly set up camp, waiting for the insane sect to arrive. Right now, more than one faction was preparing to absorb the Supreme Empyrean Holy Lands. Of the 21 Supreme Holy Lands, they were currently the weakest. If it weren't for the fact that their older generation was too strong, they would have been swallowed up long ago. In the distance, the second sorcerer god looked at the 4 people from the Supreme Holy Lands. He had a bad premonition in his heart. If Yi Qinghan reaches an agreement with them, I'm afraid there will be a problem in the competition for the entrance to the Wangu Yuntian. Last time, this old man followed Father God's star chart to find the 16 passages, and 3 of them mysteriously disappeared. There are only 13 left. With 23 factions competing, at least 10 Holy Lands will be eliminated. Originally, the Supreme Holy Lands were already eliminated, and 9 more would be enough. Now that there is one less chance, this gambling fight might be even more bloody than I thought. The second sorcerer god clenched his fists and looked at the 12 shensis, goddesses, and Ling Xiaoyu behind him. He wasn't sure how many of them would be able to survive this gambling fight. The serpent divine dragon had also chosen 4 of the strongest desolate ancient mutants from the sky monster region. Their cultivation was not inferior to the shensis, and their individual combat strength was even slightly higher. However, in a real battle, talent, experience, and mystic arts mattered. A battle between experts was unpredictable, and no one could guarantee that they would win. The serpent divine dragon appeared beside the second sorcerer god with the 4 mutants. When he saw that the second sorcerer god was staring at Nangong Batin, he guessed the reason. Later, go and persuade Yi Qinghan to give up on the Supreme Empyrean Holy Lands. With the 3 of us working together, it shouldn't be a problem for us to take 2 entrances. The second sorcerer god said in a deep voice. With his temper, I don't think we can persuade him. The serpent divine dragon shook his head, and his eyes shone with a cold light. He was determined to get the resources of the Wangu Yuntian, and he would kill anyone who stood in his way. Chapter 1107. Blue Sky City. The blue sky and white clouds stretched as far as the eye could see. Outside the city, there were dozens of camps. The Holy Lands were fighting for themselves, and they all had their own affiliated forces. Only the Holy Lands did not. All the forces were present, except for the insane sect. Not a single person came. The Holy Lands were very dissatisfied. It was just a newly risen sect that did not have any foundation. How dare they ignore the Holy Lands? According to the time, it should be today. If no one from the insane sect comes within the time it takes for an incense stick to burn, they will be excluded. Does everyone agree? Holy Lord Ji Tian Changkong said coldly. The other forces looked at the sorcerer race and saw that they did not object. They immediately agreed. Even the Z clan was united. As for the demon god mountain's attitude, it was no longer important. Yi Qinghan was still breaking through and practicing the heaven desolation technique. He was not deliberately neglecting these powerful holy lands, but he really could not make it in time. Qin Wendian looked at the various holy lands. If the insane sect really came late and dared to compete with the holy lands, they would very likely be destroyed by them. Who said that no one from the insane sect came? I'm here to be the vanguard. My uncle will be here soon. Qin Wendian stood out, and Emoli could not stop him. Are you from the insane sect or the demon god mountain? The time Holy Lord asked unhappily. It's none of your business. Qin Wendian glared and snorted. Emoli was so angry that the corner of his mouth twitched. This guy was purposely making enemies for him. However, in such a grand occasion, he could not give her face. Otherwise, she would not give him face. Instead, he would be laughed at by the world. The time Holy Lord was also angry, but he could not argue with Qin Wendian. Wendian, stop messing around. Come back, Yi Qinghan is the leader of a sect. If he can forget such an important thing or deliberately come late, he has no right to compete with the Holy Lands for resources. Emoli reprimanded coldly. Qin Wendian frowned and looked at the void. He still could not find Yi Qinghan. Nangong Yunlan was also a little anxious. She did not expect Yi Qinghan to drop the ball at such a crucial moment. Contact him. Nangong Batian said in a deep voice. Just as Nangong Yunlan was about to send a message to Yi Qinghan, a large patch of dark clouds suddenly appeared in the sky. The sky distorted, and more than 10 figures appeared out of thin air. They were all top-notch young experts. Who else could they be other than Yi Qinghan and his group? They were all clad in golden armor and held divine weapons in their hands. The men were elegant like jade, and the women were beautiful beyond compare. Their auras were like rainbows, and they were all overlords of their respective regions. There were a total of 15 of them. Da-da-da. With Yi Qinghan in the lead, he quickly stepped towards the Supreme Empyrean Holy Land, ignoring the other forces. Now that the cooperation had been reached, Yi Qinghan did not need to care about other people's feelings, nor did he need to hide anything. He directly announced to the world that the alliance between the insane sect and the Supreme Holy Land had been negotiated. The Karma Sacred Land, Space-Time Sacred Land, and the other factions were all shocked. They didn't expect Yi Qinghan to be working together with the Supreme Sacred Land. Isn't he working with the shaman race? Ji Tian Changkong frowned, feeling somewhat angry. The result of Yi Qinghan working with the shaman race or the Supreme Holy Land was clearly different. If the Supreme Holy Land did not work with Yi Qinghan, they would definitely be eliminated. The second sorcerer god could give up on the insane sect at any time, and the chances of the insane sect obtaining the entrance to the Wangu Yuntian were extremely slim. But now, everything had changed. Many people frowned. They were unable to accept this sudden change. The second sorcerer god glared at Yi Qinghan, feeling the most furious in his heart. He felt that he had been betrayed by Yi Qinghan. However, the happiest one was Emoli. He grinned coldly. Yi Qinghan and the shaman race had parted ways, and the shaman race's power had been greatly reduced. The pressure on the demon god mountain was naturally reduced by a lot. Emoli quickly gave Qin Wenyan a look. Qin Wenyan nodded and walked towards Yi Qinghan, saying in a low voice, "Uncle, Moli wants to work with you and strive to obtain the entrance to the Wangu Yuntian." Yi Qinghan looked at Moli in the distance and asked calmly, "How do we work together?" "Only the top 16 will have the chance to obtain the entrance to the Wangu Yuntian. Emoli hopes that we can go easy on each other and cooperate with each other to obtain the highest number of points and obtain the best entrance. Because of the high number of points, we will have the priority to choose." Qin Wendian looked at Yi Qinghan with anticipation. In his heart, he was somewhat unwilling for Yi Qinghan to go against the demon god mountain. Yi Qinghan narrowed his eyes, a cold light flashing in them. He asked hoarsely, "Wenyan, if I were to avenge the dead souls of the insane sect today, which side would you stand on?" Qin Wentian's body trembled. He could see that Yi Qinghan no longer wanted to control his anger. He wanted to take revenge today, which put him in a difficult position. At least I won't attack the insane sect's uncles, but I also can't attack the people of the demon god mountain." Qin Wentian's position was extremely awkward. He didn't know what to do. Moreover, the demon god mountain has many hidden ultimate elites. These years, their battle physiques have begun to show their strength. The descendants of the demon god mountain have also returned. If you attack the demon god mountain and the shaman tribe at the same time, you will suffer heavy losses and might even lose the right to fight for the Wangu Yuntian. Qin Wendian advised. Yi Qinghan's lips curled up slightly. The cold light in his eyes was concealed, and his violent heart gradually calmed down. "Tell him that I agree." Yi Qinghan was expressionless. Just as he was about to leave, he suddenly thought of his useless younger brother Yi Kuan. He had obtained the inheritance of the Dark Knight Demon God and was the left and right arm of the Great Demon God. His status wasn't any lower than the battle physique. He asked, "Have the inheritors of the Dark Knight Demon God returned?" "You know about it?" Qin Wentian's heart jumped. He looked into Yi Qinghan's eyes and didn't dare to hide anything. He spoke the truth. He has returned. His cultivation base is extremely terrifying. Under a fortuitous encounter, he obtained the complete inheritance of the Dark Knight Demon God and forcefully refined the Dark Knight Demon God's godhead. He has cultivated the Dark Knight Demon God's Tao scripture to the peak. Yi Qinghan sighed. He didn't expect there to be so many important people in the Demon God Mountain. No matter what, Yi Kuan was the last remaining relative of the Yi clan. He really couldn't bear to kill him. "Let's go back." Yi Qinghan suddenly felt extremely tired. He waved his hand and indicated for them to leave. After Qin Wenyan left, the second shaman god personally came over. He stared fixedly at Yi Qinghan's eyes, opposing him with equal harshness. "Your son is the sixth shaman god. Don't you think about your son's future before doing things?" The second shaman god questioned in a hoarse voice. My cooperation with the Supreme Holy Ground doesn't affect my cooperation with you guys. There are more than 10 entrances, not just 2. Yi Qinghan indifferently replied. There are only 13 entrances left. The other entrances have all disappeared. If you act recklessly like this, even my shaman race might not be able to obtain the entrances. The second shaman god angrily said. Yi Qinghan wasn't shocked. Instead, he laughed. The greater the pressure, the more exciting it was. Even if he had to help the shaman race obtain the entrances, he would still make the second shaman god pay a heavy price. 5 drops of supreme divine energy. I will let the shaman race obtain the highest number of points. Yi Qinghan demanded an exorbitant price. He didn't hesitate to extort the second shaman god. The second shaman god was enraged. He didn't expect Yi Qinghan to be such a scammer. He actually dared to scam him and his own son at such a crucial moment. The 6th shaman god is your son. The second shaman god angrily reprimanded. No, he is the shaman god of your shaman race. If I need help one day, he will definitely consider the interests of the shaman race. Similarly, I will also consider the interests of the insane sect. If you are willing, I will cooperate with you. If not, I will cooperate with the demon god mountain. Yi Qinghan calmly said. The second shaman god's weakness was exposed. If Yi Qinghan really cooperated with the demon god mountain, the shaman race might not be able to obtain the entrances. Alright. I agree. Remember, my shaman race obtains the highest number of points. If you don't obtain the highest number of points, you won't obtain the supreme divine energy. The second shaman god snorted. Pay up first. Yi Qinghan stretched out his hand and said calmly. The second shaman god had no choice but to hand over 5 drops of supreme divine energy. Yi Qinghan now had 11 drops of supreme divine energy in his hands. After the second shaman god left, Yi Qinghan once again walked towards the demon god mountain's camp. He found Mo Li and Yushin and went straight to the point. If they wanted to obtain the entrance to the Wangu Yuntian, they would have to take out 7 drops of supreme divine energy. Otherwise, they could forget about it. Even if the insane sect suffered heavy losses, they would stop the demon god mountain from entering the top 15. Chapter 1108. Yi Qinghan took advantage of the situation to extort them. Why would he care about morality? The 2 factions needed the resources of the Wangu Yuntian the most. They had the most elites, and without the support of the Wangu Yuntian, they wouldn't be able to withstand it. Mo Li's eyes twitched. Seeing Yi Qinghan's firm attitude, he clenched his fists and said hoarsely, You want to extort me? You can choose not to give it to me. Yi Qinghan grinned coldly. He was just worried about not having an excuse to take revenge. Now that they gave it to him, it was equivalent to tearing off a large piece of meat from their bodies. If they didn't give it to him, it wouldn't be a matter of a piece of meat anymore. Yushin stood beside Mo Li and glared angrily at Yi Qinghan. She had never met someone so difficult to deal with. His actions were completely unpredictable. Back then, when they were fighting to the death for the sake of the intangible body, Yi Qinghan had taken the initiative to send Qin Wenyan back to Demon God Mountain without any warning. He didn't even mention any conditions. But now that they were working together for a win-win situation, Yi Qinghan just had to take the opportunity to extort them. Mo Li held the demonic god's spear, and the dust on the ground involuntarily rose. His aura became more and more violent as he stared at Yi Qinghan. However, Yi Qinghan didn't care at all. He didn't even have the confidence to defeat Yi Qinghan. At most, I'll pay the same price as the second sorcerer god. Not even a little bit more. Mo Li was flustered and exasperated. If it wasn't for the importance of this matter, he would have already fought with Yi Qinghan. Yi Qinghan immediately laughed. 5 drops of supreme divine power. Pay the bill first. I will ensure that our insane sect gets an entrance. When they see people from the 2 factions, they will retreat and admit defeat. Yi Qinghan stretched out his hand and asked for the supreme divine power. Although Mo Li was reluctant, he had no choice but to give it to him. After obtaining 5 drops of supreme divine power, Yi Futian now had 16 drops on him. It was enough to ensure that the insane sect would not fall for tens of thousands of years. Even the Holy Land would not dare to bully him too much. After all, the insane sect's experts possessed the supreme divine power. Once they unleashed it, it would definitely destroy the world. Yi Qinghan distributed 16 drops of paramount godly power to the 14 experts. Each of them received 1 drop. 1 drop of paramount godly power was equivalent to 1 life. This was their life-saving trump card. Yi Qinghan heaved a sigh of relief. He lamented that the insane sect was still not strong enough. With this supreme divine power, it still could not be compared to the Holy Lands. Jiang Jingtian and the others had 1 drop each, and it would be easy for them to consume it. Dong dong dong. The sound of drums shook the heavens. All the major powers began to gather to discuss how to make the bet. The single elimination tournament was one of them. However, this alone would waste a lot of time. Therefore, the Holy Land needed a way to quickly exhaust the elites, and that was a chaotic battle. Each side will send 20 people. All of them will enter the supreme space in 3 days. Every Holy Land or power must find 100 supreme divine stones in the supreme space. Elites can snatch the supreme divine stones from each other, kill each other, or trade with each other. 1 supreme divine stone is 1 point, and the highest point is 100 points. This way, half of the elites will be eliminated. Then, the single elimination tournament will begin. A win will give you 1 point. A draw will not give you any points, and a loss will not deduct any points. The one with the highest points will have priority in choosing the entrance to the Aeon Cloud Sky and the Azura Hell. If the total points does not exceed 60, the Holy Land will be eliminated. If the total points exceeds 120, the Holy Land will be given 2 entrances. The second sorcerer god glanced at the crowd and suggested. The supreme space was a space created by the overgods. The space inside was stable and even stronger than the chaotic universe. The space was vast and boundless, but it was not dangerous. There were no spiritual herbs or living creatures. It was just a place for the overgods to spar with each other. There were some supreme divine stones inside, which was a material used to create overgod weapons. Only the overgods could melt these stones, so they were not very valuable. Therefore, no one was willing to go to the supreme space. The chaotic battle in the supreme space encouraged the elites to kill each other. The casualty rate would be very high. Moreover, if the Holy Lands wanted to complete their mission, they would have to spread out to search for the supreme divine stones. They were extremely rare and could not be found everywhere. Yi Qinghan did not know what the supreme space was. He looked at Zixin and asked curiously, "What is a supreme divine stone? Where is the supreme space? Have you divine sons and daughters been in there before?" Violet Immortal shook her head and said, "The paramount space is useless. It only has a few overgod stones, and the rest is just a desert. Overgod stones are one of the materials for overgod artifacts. There's no way to refine them at all. Even if you could refine them, you wouldn't be able to find any other overgod artifact materials, so it's useless. Ever since the end of the primordial chaos era, the paramount space has never been opened again." Since everyone was fair, Yi Qinghan did not say anything more. They just needed to wait for the arrangements. However, the Supreme Holy Land and the insane sect only had 18 people. They were still 2 people short. They were naturally behind the other Holy Lands. Yi Qinghan reminded them in a low voice, "It will probably be released at random later. We may not be able to stay together. In the early stages, don't be in a hurry to find the supreme divine stones. That thing's level is too high. It can't be stored in the Qiankuan ring. You can only carry it on your back. Carrying the supreme divine stones will only bring you danger." Emperor Yi, Jiang Jingtian, Li Feng, and Gu Qingyu were the strongest. Yi Qinghan was not worried. Medusa, Xia Ziluo, and Wu Yen were equipped with the golden armor set. They could at most be compared to the divine sons and some top experts. Once they were surrounded, they would be in danger. Yi Qinghan looked at the people from the insane sect and pulled Nangong Yunlan and the other 2 over so that everyone could get familiar with each other. In the supreme space, other than the 18 of them, even the gods could not be trusted. Yi Qinghan said seriously, "If you meet Yi Kuan in the supreme space, try not to attack him. His close combat skills are similar to mine. I heard that he has improved a lot and is very dangerous. I don't think he will dare to attack the insane sect. If he attacks the insane sect, tell him. If he attacks the insane sect, I will find him personally. Everyone nodded. They obviously would not take the initiative to attack Yi Kuan. They were afraid that Yi Kuan would take the initiative to attack. After some discussion, the 21 holy lords of the Holy Lands worked together and tore the sky apart. A deep space that stretched endlessly appeared above Blue Sky City. It was like the entrance to hell. The depths were gray and the space was abnormally stable. Everyone will be teleported to a random location. There will not be any accidents. 3 days later, release your divine power to sense our divine power and we will bring you out. Once you die, your corpses will be left in the supreme space. The second sorcerer god said to everyone. Everyone replied in unison. Sush, sush, sush. Many people began to take the initiative to rush into the supreme space. Only by gaining a firm foothold would they have an advantage. Yi Qinghan and the others did not hesitate. This was not the time to give in. The 18 of them rushed into the deep chasm together and disappeared in a flash. 23 forces, more than 400 elites, each holding a divine weapon, passed through the chasm and landed in the desolate world. The supreme space was so huge that it was bigger than several large regions. 400 people landed in a relatively safe space hundreds of thousands of miles away. However, some of them were not so lucky and happened to land beside some of the top divine sons. They were killed with a wave of their hands, and their blood stained the sand. Coiling Tiger, Mo Li Ji Tianxin, Marshal King Ji, and the others were the top divine kings. They were strong contenders for the supreme god position. Their attacks were ruthless and merciless. With a wave of their hands, they could crush the sky. Boom. Streaks of sword light pierced through space. Anything that did not belong to their holy lands was an enemy. The beginning of this battle was unusually bloody. Chapter 1109. Whoosh, hum. A sword light flashed by, and the sound of the sword destroyed the will of the experts. Even the elite kings were terrified, as if the sword was going to destroy the sky. No one would hold back in this battle. They only cared about killing and obtaining points. Only by winning this battle could their clansmen and sacred grounds stand tall in the chaotic universe for thousands of years. The kings who were not strong enough to compete with the top-tier gods' sons moved cautiously, including those from the insane sect. If they encountered a top-tier god's son, they could only run and not fight. If they were killed here, they would not be able to take revenge. No one knew who the enemy was. Years after their death, only a pile of bones would be left. Di Longtian held the heavenly Tao god killing sword in his hand and wore a golden armor. He kept a low profile as he sneaked through the withered mountains. There were plants in the mountains, but they were all shrubs that could survive in harsh conditions. They were harder than steel, and ordinary divine weapons could not destroy them. This was indeed a place where the supreme gods fought. Sword marks and sword marks could be seen everywhere. However, if the supreme gods could not destroy this space, these young experts could not. More than a dozen peak-grade kings charged forward. The stable space and supreme great Tao laws suppressed the overlords to the point where even flying was extremely difficult. This place had become their world. Once they were discovered, there was no way to escape. Regardless of speed or strength, they were far inferior to these peak-grade kings. Boom! A sword light pierced through the clouds. Yi Qinghan's aura sword. His golden armor glowed brightly as he charged forward, hoping to attract the insane sex people to come closer. Yi Qinghan used the dragon transformation technique in a very high-profile manner. A 10,000 feet long divine dragon swam through the barren space, suppressing the experts of the sacred grounds. They did not dare to attack and could only dodge. The first to respond to Yi Qinghan was Emperor Yi. The heavenly music caused the sky to rumble. Sand and stones danced in the air. The vision of a 7-colored divine phoenix appeared at the top of the sky. The sun and the moon appeared at the same time. Dressed in a white robe, Emperor Yi sat cross-legged on the head of the god-slaying eagle and swooped down to the supreme space. However, the supreme space was too big and everyone's speed was suppressed. They could only hear the sound but not see the trail. Tao Heaven Holy Ground Saint, the ultimate divine child, Tao Tianxiong Fei, held the sky-splitting divine bow in his hand as he strolled through the mountains and rivers. His green robe fluttered in the wind, and his movements were like a rainbow piercing through the sun. Wherever he passed, no one dared to make a sound. This divine bow was too powerful. Even a second-level divine son like Tao Tian Yunfei could send Mo Li flying with it. In the hands of Tao Tian Xiongfei, it was even more powerful and charming. Tao Tian Xiongfei's face was expressionless. His eyes flashed as he crossed 100 miles of space and time. He suddenly pulled the bow and poured out his godly power. He stepped on the mountain rocks and the solid ground trembled slightly. The sky-splitting divine bow was pulled halfway out. The space was distorted by the terrifying power and was about to shatter. Whoosh. Whoosh. Divine force turned into a divine arrow, shattering the void. The space-time order in front of him completely changed, completely destroyed by him. The arrow's power was unstoppable. A powerhouse wearing the uniform of the Holy Land of Order heard the commotion behind him. He stamped his foot and flew several miles into the sky. However, the divine arrow changed its trajectory and followed closely behind him. Ada bang! The divine arrow pierced through the powerhouse's body. The defensive armor didn't even buy him any time. The king-level giant god only had time to scream before his body exploded. His blood dyed half the sky, and not even his bones were left. Tao Tianxiong Fei put away his bow without any emotion. It was as if he was crushing an ant. Millions of miles away, Martial King Ji Tianxin was wearing a royal robe. The divine sword in his hand was stained with blood. It was obvious that he had killed a powerhouse. This day was destined to be the doomsday of the elite kings. Mo Li, Purple Saint, Coiling Tiger, and the other experts chased after the outer Holy Lands. No matter who it was, they killed on sight. There was no room for negotiation. If they killed the outer Holy Lands, they would be weaker, and they would be stronger. The top powerhouses of the various Holy Lands showed no mercy. Yi Qinghan was no exception. It was hard to imagine the extent of the massacre when this group of monsters gathered together. However, it was imaginable that the top kings would be stained with blood. Maniac Sex Yen Yunbei held a strange giant divine weapon in his left hand. This was specially made by Yi Qinghan. It was a crescent moon with extremely sharp blades on both sides. There were 5 holes in the center where 5 fingers could fit in. It had almost merged with the body, turning into a deadly killing weapon. In his right hand was an ordinary dagger filled with Xian energy and reincarnation aura. As long as he got close, he would definitely be killed with lightning speed. At this moment, he was like a ghost traversing through the supreme space. His eyes and ears were alert. No one could escape his eyes, but not many could discover him. He quietly approached an empty valley. There was a special light in the valley. As he got closer, he realized that it was a supreme god stone. It emitted a faint supreme god power. This stone was easy to recognize. It was only the size of a fist and had a divine light. Other stones wouldn't have this kind of divine light. Shua. Yen Yunbei turned into a wisp of smoke and swept across the valley. With a wave of his hand, the stone was taken away. However, on the other side of the valley, a god's son appeared. With a shake of the sword in his hand, 3 sword flowers tore through the void and appeared at Yen Yunbei's throat. Whoosh! Yen Yunbei reacted quickly. He flew backward and rolled a few times on the ground. Seeing the evil smile at the corner of the man's mouth, he quickly turned to look. There was another one behind him. They were wearing the same clothes. It was obvious that they were from the same Holy Land. Xianyuan Holy Land. Yen Yunbei's pupils shrank. This man with the word, Xianyuan, embroidered on his left shoulder must be a direct descendant of Xianyuan. He should be a god's son. However, the other person behind him didn't have such embroidery. He must be a follower of a subsidiary family. Shua. Yen Yunbei turned into a wisp of smoke and disappeared again. However, the two great powerhouses of the Shenyuan family blocked the way and attacked the wisp of smoke at the same time. Boom! The place where Yan Yunbei stood was shattered. The stones on the ground cracked, but there was no blood. It meant that they didn't injure Yan Yunbei. Be careful! That god's son waved his sword in all directions, afraid that Yan Yunbei would sneak attack him. The other person's reaction was a bit slower. A wisp of smoke appeared on his body and wrapped around him like a long snake. It spun continuously, leaving no trace behind. Puchi. A white light flashed and blood splattered everywhere. The Shenyuan family thought that the follower of a peak king had died miserably on the spot. However, Yan Yunbei had disappeared. He was like a specter that disappeared without a trace. It was impossible to let him fight in the arena. However, in this space, even a peak king's son might not be able to defend against his attacks. No! That god's son roared. He swept his sword in all directions and hit the mountain rocks on both sides. The rocks fell down, but Yan Yunbei had already left. He wouldn't be entangled with him. Chapter 11:10. In the supreme space, everyone was in a killing frenzy. Even if their bodies died, their souls would turn into demons and choose to self-destruct. Unless the two were not on the same level and were killed on the spot. They were not enemies, but mortal enemies. The Holy Lands did not differentiate between each other. They killed on sight. More than 400 people were in a chaotic battle. Everyone was in danger. If they were surrounded, they would die without a doubt. Yi Qinghan and the other super-existences were very strong, but everyone who saw them ran away. They did not dare to fight and could only choose to run. At this moment he pulled out the divine bird and the little miser. "Help me find the supreme god stones," Yi Qinghan said hoarsely. The divine bird was thinking of doing something. Last time, it had broken the contract and escaped, angering Yi Qinghan. If it did not do something this time, it would not have a good time in the future. "Leave it to me. This divine bird guarantees that you will be first," the divine bird said solemnly. "Will there be a reward?" the little miser asked weakly. "Do you want me to slap you?" Yi Qinghan retorted in annoyance. The little miser hurriedly shook his head. At this moment, he did not dare to show off to Yi Qinghan. The divine bird stood on Yi Qinghan's shoulder and looked down. After a long time, it pointed into the distance. "Move quickly to the left. There must be a special stone within 300 miles. Yi Qinghan left with a swoosh. The distance of 100 miles was covered in an instant. 10 breaths later, Yi Qinghan appeared outside a valley with the divine bird. The supreme god stones were placed outside the valley. There were 3 of them. They were thrown messily like trash. Yi Qinghan's imprint on his forehead moved and the Great Wastelands monument took them away. "Continue. I want at least 200 supreme god stones." Yi Qinghan saw that the divine bird could find the supreme god stones so easily. It would be a waste of its talent if he did not make use of it. The divine bird was furious. Treasure hunting was very tiring. It was not as if it could be done with a wave of its hand. So it looked up and glared at Yi Qinghan. "Why do you want so many? You can get full marks with 100 pieces. Are you pure or stupid? We have all the divine stones in our hands, so we can sell them. 10 god stones for 1 drop of paramount divine power. When the time comes, all the Holy Lands will fight to buy it." Yi Qinghan said coldly, exasperated. "You're even more of a money grubber than me." The little money grubber snorted and mocked. Yi Qinghan laughed coldly. "When you are in danger, don't ask me to use my over-god divine power to protect you." The little money grubber immediately withered. After that, the little money grubber and the divine bird worked together to search for the supreme divine stones. He flashed continuously in the boundless space, and also took the initiative to attack people. When the experts of some power saw him, they threw down the divine stones they found and fled. After Yi Qinghan obtained the divine stones, he did not pursue them. Instead, he focused on searching for treasures in peace. He was prepared to control all of the divine stones and then sell them in exchange for supreme godly power. Along the way, Yi Qinghan met Medusa and brought her along. After 6 hours in the space, Yi Qinghan found more than 80 pieces of divine stones. Wherever he went, there would be no more supreme godly stones. Even if there were, they would be underground and could not be penetrated. There was no need to waste time excavating them. In the afternoon, the two strolled through the mountains and rivers. Unexpectedly, they ran into Ji Tianling. When Ji Tianling saw Yi Qinghan, his legs trembled. Only he knew that Yi Qinghan was the Azura King, and the Azura King was Yi Qinghan. He had personally fought with Yi Qinghan, and he was not a match for Yi Qinghan. Yi Qinghan looked at Ji Tianling and sneered. He took large strides forward and closed in on Ji Tianling. "Brother, we have no enmity. Spare my life. 3 drops of paramount godly power that have been diluted 10 times. That's all I have left." Ji Tianling's face turned bitter. He did not even think of fighting back. Yi Qinghan was startled. He guessed that this guy recognized him. His eyes flashed with a cold light. Ji Tianling was frightened by Yi Qinghan's gaze and retreated. He was on the verge of tears. He said in despair, "Brother Yi, you said that if I was bullied in the future, I would look for you. You can't do this to me." Yi Qinghan was now sure that Ji Tianling had recognized him. He coldly asked, "Who did you tell my identity?" "I swear to the heavens. I did not tell anyone. From that day onwards, I treated you as my boss. I have no intention of betraying you." Ji Tianling repeatedly shouted. He was afraid that Yi Qinghan would not believe him. He wanted nothing more than to kneel and swear. "Kill him. This trash is useless." The divine bird looked at this piece of trash with disdain and ridiculed. Yi Qinghan shook his head. He walked to Ji Tianling's side and patted him on the shoulder, almost causing him to kneel on the ground. "I said that I would protect you. Why would I kill you?" Yi Qinghan supported Ji Tianling and said with a smile, "Don't worry. Follow me, but don't speak nonsense. Say what you should say, and don't know what you shouldn't say. Understand?" "Understood, understood." Ji Tianling's forehead was covered in cold sweat. He wiped it with his hand, not daring to look Yi Qinghan in the eye. If Yi Qinghan wanted to kill him, it would be as easy as waving his hand. "Keep the diluted paramount godly power for yourself. You know what to do when you find the paramount godly stone, right?" Yi Qinghan calmly asked. "Give it all to boss." Ji Tianling said without hesitation. "Be good." Yi Qinghan smiled. Da-da-da. After Ji Tianling received the order to leave, he frantically rushed into the distance. He didn't even dare to look back. His speed was several times faster than usual. Perhaps this was the will to survive. But what a spineless person. How can you be so cheap? The divine bird scolded disdainfully. Yi Qinghan rolled his eyes and looked at the divine bird. Ji Tianling Kong's wretchedness was much better than it. If the divine bird was in such danger, it would be begging on its knees, wailing like ghosts and howling like wolves. Now, it actually had the face to call others wretchedness. Yi Qinghan's speed was too fast. Wherever he passed, there would be no more paramount godly stones. Many people couldn't find anything behind him. Instead, it was very dangerous. They could be chased at any time. Emperor Yi strolled in the wilderness, hugging a huge divine zither. It was almost as tall as her. She looked very weak, but no one dared to provoke her. Some of the divine sons of the Holy Lands didn't dare to act recklessly and stayed far away. However, there were always blind people. At this moment, a white tiger with an extremely pure bloodline from the white tiger holy race revealed its true form. It turned into a bolt of lightning and pounced from the distance. It was a dozen meters tall, and compared to the little lowly Emperor Yi, it was like a giant. Its fangs were enough to swallow Emperor Yi whole. Emperor Ye's divine robes fluttered in the wind. Sensing the murderous aura behind him, he turned his head and looked into the distance. The majestic white tiger pounced from the sky like a hot knife through butter. Its hair fluttered in the wind, covering its face and obscuring its eyes. However, it did not panic at all. It only gently plucked a string. Buzz. The string vibrated lightly as a strand of austere aura broke through the shackles and blasted into the white tiger's head. The white tiger bared its fangs, but it did not stop in its tracks. It continued to charge forward. It was attracted by Renhuang Ye's qi and blood and had completely lost its mind. Hum hum hum. Hum 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 hum. Emperor Yi held the zither with one hand and spread open the 5 fingers of his right hand. He grabbed 9 strings and gently pulled them forward. The zither's melody was solemn and majestic, causing one's blood to boil and heaven and earth to wail. It was as if the mountains and rivers were moving along with it. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Her white robes fluttered, revealing her slender long legs that were as straight as a lone poplar. They were wrapped in a hazy white muslin and her skirt covered half of her face. She was extremely beautiful and seemed to be in harmony with heaven and earth. Boom! The heavenly melody suddenly became filled with killing intent. The energy was like a blade that cut through the clouds and blasted towards the white tiger. Even the space was cut apart. It was terrifying and fierce, causing the white tiger's hair to stand on end. It turned around and wanted to run away. Chapter 11:11. Whoosh! The sound of the void shattering reverberated through the mountains. The white tiger was so frightened that it turned around and fled. However, it had provoked Emperor Yi and its fate was sealed. Boom! The blade shadow directly flipped the white tiger to the ground. The force was so strong that the white tiger rolled dozens of times on the ground without stopping. Whoosh! Emperor Yi tapped the air with his toes and appeared in front of the white tiger like a fairy, blocking its escape route. His 10 fingers spread out and the zither floated in the air. The melody triggered the order of the laws in the space. Glowing runes appeared around the white tiger and spun continuously, enveloping it. The space inside was getting smaller and smaller. Roar, roar, roar. The white tiger was shocked. It kept waving its huge paws to hit the glowing runes. However, it could not move them at all. Glowing wind blades appeared within the runes. They were extremely fierce and stirred wildly. Even a giant soldier god could be torn apart. The white tiger was in despair. It looked at the approaching blade shadow in horror. The space was being torn apart and it was almost at its side. No matter how hard it tried, it could not open a path to escape. The aura of death enveloped the white tiger, making it powerless. It could only kneel on the ground and beg continuously. Buzz! Emperor Yi pressed the strings of the zither. The sound of the zither suddenly disappeared and the melody returned to nothingness. The energy of the enchantment that enveloped the white tiger also disappeared. The soul-stealing blade shadow also dispersed. Submit to me and I will spare your life. Emperor Ye's large, round eyes flickered with a star-like radiance. They were deep and boundless, causing people to be unable to break free from his gaze. His soft voice was as pleasant as the sounds of nature. It was incomparably clear and resounded in the air. It sounded soft and weak, but in the ears of the white tiger, it was like the will of a supreme god. It did not dare to refute. Let's go. Emperor Yi tapped the ground again. His figure was ethereal as he landed on the back of the white tiger with his zither. He placed his legs to the side and sat on the white tiger's back. He was almost one with the white tiger. If one did not look carefully, one would not know that there was a person on the white tiger. The white tiger trembled and continued to move forward, not daring to do anything excessive. Emperor Yi gradually relaxed and laid comfortably on the white tiger's back. He leaned his head against the tiger's head and crossed his legs. He hugged the divine zither and looked at the dusky sky. He gradually closed his eyes to rest, but the white tiger didn't dare to do it again. 500,000 kilometers away, Di Long Tian encountered a murderous aura. He encountered Dao Tian Yunfei. This fellow had used the Sky Splitter Divine Bow to send Mo Li flying, so his cultivation was definitely not weak. However, he no longer had the Divine Bow, but he had a giant divine weapon. At this moment, he was forcefully blocking Di Long Tian. Di Long Tian gripped the Heaven Dao God-slaying sword tightly, and his right hand pressed on the sword hilt. His golden armor exuded the aura of reincarnation, and a cold gleam flashed across his eyes. Without wasting any time, he drew his sword and prepared to fight. The heavenly Tao-killing deity sword's soaring sword chi pierced through the clouds, dispersing the clouds and revealing the sun. A blue sky and white clouds appeared. Boom! The distance of 1,000 meters was considered very close in the outside world, but in the supreme space, It was very far. Dao Tian Yunfei leaned back and pulled the divine bow to its limit. A divine arrow pierced through the sky and collided with the Heaven Dao sword in Di Longtian's hand. The terrifying impact sent him flying, and the azure dragon mark on his arm suddenly released a divine light. His strength suddenly increased by 1,000 times. Hua! Di Longtian's arm moved back slightly, and with a sudden burst of strength, the divine arrow in front of him was actually split into two and flew past him. Instead of retreating, Di Longtian advanced. His dragon aura was vast and mighty, and with a long roar, he dispersed the dusky clouds, revealing the azure sky above. Kill! Exa Di Longtian roared, and like a hot knife through butter, the Heaven Dao sword slashed out hundreds of sword shadows. Great Nirvana sword art. Sword destroying the firmament. Hua! Hiss hiss hiss. The sound of space shattering made people feel despair. The sword chief first attacked Dao Tian Yunfei's side. Dao Tian Yunfei was shocked. He didn't expect Di Longtian to be able to split his divine arrow. He couldn't react in time and lost the initiative. He was continuously sent flying by Di Longtian's sword. When he drew the bow again, he didn't have the chance to pull it back. Boom, boom, boom. The sword chi clashed with the rocks, leaving only a few sword marks. Sparks flew everywhere, but it couldn't destroy the rocks. The space here was too strong. It was so strong that the giant god couldn't even cause any damage here. Shua! Di Longtian flipped his hand again and swept across Dao Tian Yunfei's head, cutting off a few strands of black hair. Sword of leaving hand. Shua! 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 The Heaven Dao sword left his hand and pierced through the left side of Dao Tian Yunfei's waist. Puchi! Dao Tian Yunfei's defensive armor was effortlessly pierced through by the Heaven Dao sword, and blood spurted out. Dao Tian Yunfei screamed and used the force to escape. However, Di Longtian had received Yi Qinghan's close combat inheritance. There were very few who could win against him in close combat. Moreover, he had the Azure Dragon mark. Perhaps only Yi Qinghan's body and close combat could compete with him. I want you to die now. You won't be able to escape from my palm. Di Longtian transformed into a dragon and soared into the sky. He chased after Dao Tian Yunfei with a dive. The Azure Dragon soared into the sky and swung its tail at Dao Tian Yunfei's body. Dao Tian Yunfei rolled on the ground and rushed into the ravine, limiting Di Longtian's combat power to the limit. He could only return to his original body and charge forward. Die! Dao Tian Yunfei swallowed a drop of supreme godly power that was 100 times diluted. His godly power was vast and mighty, almost breaking his body. His divine bow was almost broken by him. A divine arrow shot out, carrying a trace of his will, toward Di Longtian. Shua! 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 Di Longtian activated the Azure Dragon's godly power and waved the Heavenly Dao sword to form a huge 8-trigram sword formation. Just as it was formed, it was struck by the divine arrow and almost shattered. The terrifying power made it impossible for him to stand firm and forced him to retreat. Shua! 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 Di Longtian's legs were almost broken. The 8-trigram sword formation in front of him would shatter at any moment. Once it did, even with the protection of the golden armor, he would lose half his life. He definitely wouldn't be able to withstand Dao Tian Yunfei's second attack. Even if he could, the third and fourth attacks would take his life. Death descended upon him, forcing Di Longtian to throw his head back and roar. The mark on his forehead merged with the mark of the Azure Dragon. Azure Dragon scales covered his entire body, and the veins on his body bulged. It was as if he was also a member of the dragon race. A dragon roar came out of Di Longtian's mouth, and a vast and pure Azure Dragon's supreme godly power surged out. The 8-trigram sword formation in front of him suddenly strengthened and forcibly shattered the divine arrow. No. Can. Azure Dragon Saint's son Mark. You're the successor of the Azure Dragon's supreme god? Dao Tian Yunfei yelled in shock. He stared at Di Longtian in disbelief, as if he had seen a ghost. If he was the successor of the Azure Dragon, Then what about the dragon sons of the Azure Dragon sacred area? Die. The Azure Dragon mark on Di Longtian's forehead emitted a blurry figure of a small azure dragon. It coiled around his golden body, causing his flesh to erupt with power. His strength was instantly increased by 100 times, almost comparable to Yi Qinghan's all-out attack. Bang! A sword descended from the sky and appeared right above Dao Tian Yunfei's head. Dao Tian Yunfei raised his godly bow to block the attack, but the powerful godly bow failed to stop the sword of heaven's path. It was slashed apart, and even his head was split open. Puji. Dao Tian Yunfei died tragically on the spot. His godhead did not escape, and his soul was destroyed by the sword intent. His blood splattered everywhere, dyeing the beach nearby red. The first powerful god's son had been slain, indicating that more god's sons would fall in the future. A solemn melody echoed between the heavens and earth. The experts in all directions were fighting, but Yi Qinghan did the opposite and snatched the supreme god's stone from them. Chapter 11-12. Outside of Blue Sky City, more than 400 life tablets were placed together. Everyone's name was written on them, and they were constantly shattering. When Dao Tian Yunfei died, the experts of the Dao Heaven True Master Holy Land turned pale. This was the strongest god's son that had died so far. Every Holy Land had suffered casualties. The Peerless Holy Land had the least casualties, but Nangong Ao Shui was also injured. There was only one power that had not suffered a single casualty, and that was the Insane Sect. In the space, Nangong Yunlan was crazily killing in order to find Nangong Yunao and Nangong Ao Shui. Their strength was not at the peak, so it was easy for them to die. When Nangong Yunlan flipped out, it was equivalent to the most extreme existence going crazy. Wherever he passed, no one dared to obstruct him. His goal wasn't to kill, but to search for someone. Therefore, whenever Ji Tianxian and Martial King met him, they would take the initiative to avoid him. They didn't want both sides to suffer and benefit others. However, on the other side, Nangong Ao Shui was very far away from Nangong Yunlan. It was almost impossible for her to wait for him to save her. Now that she was severely injured, she was not far from death. If she encountered another expert from another race, she would die. At this moment, she was hiding in a small valley, leaning on a rock. Her left shoulder was pierced by a sword, and the rock under her body was stained with blood. She swallowed a saint healing medicine to stabilize her injury, but she had lost more than half of her battle strength. Her wound was wrapped with a white cloth, but her white robe had turned red. Perhaps it was a coincidence, but Yen Yunbei had found 3 godly stones and arrived nearby. He smelled the scent of blood and approached quietly with a dagger. His divine sense was restricted, so he did not know that Nangong Ao Shui was inside the valley. A murderous intent flashed in his eyes as he went around the mountain. Looking at the blood-red robe, he reached for Nangong Ao Shui's neck. Nangong Ao Shui did not realize that someone had already put a dagger into her body. She was still breathing evenly. She moved her body slightly, and her wound was almost torn apart. She could not help but moan, which made Yen Yunbei stunned. His fingers trembled, and the dagger was pressed against her chin. Nangong Ao Shui's entire body was stiff. If Yen Yunbei used a little force, she would die. Therefore, she did not dare to move. Yen Yunbei reached out his hand and turned Nangong Ao Shui's face. He was also shocked as he recognized that she was from the Peerless Holy Land. Yen Yunbei's face turned red. He put away his dagger and took a few steps back. He quickly said, "I'm sorry. I didn't expect it to be you. I'm Yen Yunbei from the Kuang sect." Nangong Ao Shui was so scared that her beautiful face turned pale. She didn't react for a long time. She stared at Yen Yunbei for a long time before she recognized him. Her body went limp. She couldn't imagine the feeling of being half a step away from death. "Fellow Taoist Yen, you scared me to death. How did you do it?" Nangong Ao Shui said with a bitter smile. Yen Yunbei smiled awkwardly. He had never dealt with women in his life, let alone such a beautiful woman. In addition, the process of getting to know her was a little awkward. Now, he didn't know what to say. I cultivate assassination techniques. Yen Yunbei said honestly. Cough cough, Nangong Aoshue coughed out blood. His face was deathly pale and his qi and blood were unstable. It was difficult for him to recover quickly. Fellow Taoist, are you all right? I have a healing panacea here. You can use it first. Yen Yunbei was like a young man who had just been born. He blushed and handed over a golden pill. The expression on his handsome face was very strange. He wanted to get close to Nangong Aoshue but didn't dare to. Thank you. Nangong Aoshue didn't refuse. If she didn't repair it in time, she wouldn't be able to last until tonight. Nangong Aoshue took the golden pill and swallowed it. It melted in her body and turned into a rolling divinity that filled her limbs and bones. A warm current appeared in her torn wounds. Then she felt cool. This was a necessary divine pill for the Kuang sect. Yi Qinghan had gathered a lot of divine herbs to refine this divine pill. If she had two, it was equivalent to 2 lives. Soon, Nangong Aoshue's face looked better. Her eyes were full of gratitude. However, when she saw Yen Yunbei's shy look, she couldn't help but laugh. Fellow Taoist, you're so cute. I thought the Kuang sect was full of old foxes like Yi Qinghan. Nangong Aoshue teased with a smile. Yen Yunbei didn't know how to reply. He could only stand there and wait for Nangong Aoshue to completely repair it. Then they could leave this place together. Nangong Aoshue saw that Yen Yunbei didn't speak, so she stopped teasing him. She sat cross-legged on the ground and healed her wounds. However, the smell of blood in the valley was too strong. When the wind blew, it could be smelled from a few miles away. At this moment, 2 groups of people were approaching quickly. One group had 3 people and the other had 2 people. Yen Yunbei sensed the approaching enemies. He quickly woke Nangong Aoshue up and whispered, "Fellow Taoist, be careful. There are enemies approaching." "How many people?" Nangong Aoshue was shocked and asked quickly. 5 people. One group came from the entrance and the other from the exit. Our way is blocked. Yen Yunbei glanced around, looking for a way to escape. You go first. My injuries can't be healed in a short time. You can't escape with me. Nangong Aoshue couldn't bear to implicate Yen Yunbei and said hurriedly. Yen Yunbei held the dagger in his hand. His aura suddenly shook and the pressure was terrifying. Even the will in his eyes changed. I, the crazy sect, will never give up on my teammates. You can focus on healing your injuries. I will delay them. Yen Yunbei said in a deep voice. Nangong Aoshue was stunned by Yen Yunbei's words. She didn't expect the shy Yen Yunbei to have such an aura. Ha, can you delay them? I can't stand the people of the crazy sect. Today, I will let you have one less person. A cold voice resounded in the valley. Boom. 3 silhouettes descended forcefully, followed by 2 more silhouettes. Both the front and back paths were blocked. Yen Yunbei looked at the clothes of the 2 groups. It was obvious that they were not from the same group. His eyes flashed coldly and he said, "Let's see if I can delay them." Yen Yunbei was still in front of them a second ago. In the next second, he disappeared. A wisp of smoke dispersed into the air without a trace. Whoever moves will die. A deep voice reverberated through the valley. It was impossible to tell where the voice came from. At this moment, the 5 of them were locked onto at the same time. It was as if there was a sharp sword hanging above their heads. Anyone who moved the sword would fall and shatter their source of life. The 5 of them changed their expressions at the same time. Their eyeballs moved randomly, but no one dared to take a step forward. Nangong Aoshue was shocked at first. She didn't expect Yen Yunbei to be such a contradictory person. He was so ruthless to his enemies, but he was reticent and even shy to his teammates. His domineering aura at this moment made her tremble. However, she quickly reacted. She no longer cared about the 5 people around her. Instead, she used all her strength to activate the divine medicine in her body to heal her injuries. Yen Yunbei was stalling for time with his life. He cultivated the art of assassination. If the other party really dared to move, he could only kill one of them. At that time, he would be exposed and die miserably. Chapter 11:13. In the narrow valley. A force was rising. A pair of eyes was staring at everyone, and a sharp knife was pointed at their throats. Whoever moved would die. There were 5 people on both sides. No one wanted to die, and no one wanted to move. They all hoped that the other side would lure Yan Yunbei out. However, those who could reach this level of cultivation were not fools. No one was willing to take a blow for the other. Nangong Aoshue seized the opportunity and tried her best to absorb the godly power and medicine. Half of the injury on her left shoulder was healed, and she swallowed another godly pellet. She quickly stood up and looked at the 2 sides vigilantly. They were unfamiliar, but she was sure that they were followers of a certain power. However, she couldn't tell which power they belonged to because their clothes were not from the sacred land. Nangong Aoshue took a few steps back and kept a certain distance from the 5, forming a triangle. The situation was very dangerous, and no one dared to attack. "You retreat first." Yan Yunbei's voice echoed in the valley again. The 5 powerful warriors raised their eyebrows and tried to track him down, but failed. Nangong Aoshue also didn't know where Yan Yunbei was. She knew that he could leave at any time if he wanted to. He was just stalling for time for her. Therefore, she didn't hesitate and slowly moved towards the mountain peak. The mountain peak was very steep, and rocks kept falling down. Nangong Aoshue stepped on the rocks, and without anyone stopping her, she easily rushed out of the mountain peak and disappeared into the other side. The valley was extremely quiet, and the 5 were sweating. They were all waiting anxiously for fear that Yan Yunbei would suddenly attack them. If he really wanted to kill them, he could easily kill one of them. However, once he showed himself, he wouldn't be able to escape. The 4 of them could easily injure him, and it would be extremely difficult for him to hide again. Time passed by slowly, and the 5 were staring at each other. They didn't dare to be careless. 2 hours after Nangong Aoshue left, the 5 realized that the pair of eyes had disappeared, and the godly weapon on their throats had also disappeared. The sense of crisis was gone, and they immediately relaxed. They felt weak all over. Otherwise, the 3 of them would have immediately attacked the other side. Although the other 2 were no longer locked down, they were still on high alert and quickly left the valley. 100 miles away, Yan Yunbei pulled Nangong Aoshue and quickly moved forward. They avoided the danger and entered an iron shrub forest. The thorns on the shrub were like divine weapons, extremely sharp. Divine clothes would be torn apart upon contact. Nangong Aoshue's battle robe had already been torn apart. In the supreme space, they were still fighting fiercely. The strong were always strong. No matter what kind of experts they encountered, they couldn't stop their footsteps. A day later, more than 20 experts emerged from within the space. The elites retreated upon seeing them, not daring to resist. Yi Qinghan, Jiang Jingtian, Li Feng, Gu Qingyu, Di Longtian, and Emperor Yi of the Insane faction occupied half of the territory. Demon God Mountain's Mo Li, Spiritual Body Qin Wenyin, Dark Knight Demon God Yi Kuan. Ling Xiaoyu, the divine son of Wu Zulong of the Sorcerer Tribe, the luminous martial battle body. The Master of Space, the Overlord of Sky. The Purple Saint of the Z Clan. Dao Tianxiong Fei of the Dao Heavenly True Lord Holy Ground. The Supreme Battle Monarch of the Supreme Holy Land, Nangong Yunlan. White Tiger Holy Lord, Fairy Divine Phoenix, Vermilion Bird Battle God Huotianha, Primal Chaos Divine Child Ji Wuhan. Martial King Jitanshan of the Karma Holy Land. Xianyuan Qing Emperor. The Son of the Wind, Feng Qingshan. Most of them were saint sons, or divine daughters. They emerged from more than 400 king-level experts and won without a fight. They definitely didn't rely on their foundation, but their true strength. In the space, the first day of fighting ended. A total of 53 people had died, leaving only about 400 left. The death rate wasn't high, but everyone knew that most of them were searching for the Supreme God Stones on the first day. The number of deaths on the second day would definitely exceed the number of deaths on the first day. The third day would be even more tragic. It would be considered good if there were even 100 people left. This kind of loss would make the Holy Land feel the pinch. However, Yi Qinghan wasn't in a hurry. In this day, he had collected nearly 300 stones and found Xian Yain of the insane faction. The people of the insane faction were quickly gathering. As long as 3 to 5 people gathered, even if there weren't any top experts, the kings of the Holy Lands wouldn't dare to act recklessly. Moreover, these 3 to 5 people were from the insane faction. They were all protected by golden armors. If the 5 of them worked together, even Mo Li wouldn't be able to escape. Emperor Yi kept a low profile. He had been lying on the back of the White Tiger's descendant and hadn't made a move yet. However, everyone knew that he was one of the most terrifying experts. In one day, Emperor Yi had found 3 insane faction experts: Yi Chen Tian, Divine Lotus Empress, and Qitian Monkey King. Yi Qinghan had found Xian Yain and Medusa. In addition, Yan Yunbei and Nangong Aoshue were together. The remaining experts were all able to protect themselves. Jiang Jingtian, Gu Qingyu, Li Feng, Zixin, and Di Longtian were all experts among experts. Xia Ziluo's dark sky art had been cultivated to the extreme. With the protection of the golden armors and the Hell's reincarnation map, he could at least stay alive. Nie Tian of the insane faction carried his huge axe and was incomparably valiant. Unexpectedly, he encountered the descendant of Pan Gu, Coiling Tiger. Nie Tian was a reckless man who didn't know what was good for him and wanted to compete with Coiling Tiger. He waved his huge axe and chopped down, causing heaven and earth to tremble. Coiling Tiger looked at Nie Tian speechlessly. Coiling Tiger was a top existence, and his cultivation wasn't any weaker than Mo Li, the descendant of the demon god. After dodging a few times, he found that Nie Tian's huge axe moves were similar to the Pan clan's axe moves. Most importantly, the Pan clan's axe moves had never been exposed. Nie Tian had purely figured it out by himself. Coiling Tiger appreciated this talent and didn't kill him. Instead, he defeated him and kept him by his side. As time passed, the people from the various holy lands began to gather. If anyone was alone during the day, they would definitely die if they ran into an enemy force. That night, Jiang Jingtian, Li Feng, and the others were quietly approaching. In the middle of the night, Jiang Jingtian and Li Feng ran into each other, while Gu Qingyu and Zixin ran into each other. Di Longtian seemed to be extremely tired as he dragged his body forward. His sea of consciousness was in chaos, and the mark on his forehead was flickering uncontrollably. "What's wrong with me? Why am I so tired?" Di Longtian didn't understand. He was getting more and more tired, as if all the essence in his body had been sucked out. Now, even walking was extremely slow, and his vision was blurry. Hum, hum, hum. The heavenly Tao sword violently trembled and let out a long hum, as if it was trying to wake Di Longtian up. However, it still couldn't wake him up. Swoosh! A black shadow pounced over from the sky, its sharp claws tearing through the darkness, aiming for the back of Di Longtian's head. Perhaps it was a subconscious action, but Di Longtian's body twisted, and he transformed into an azure dragon that soared into the sky. The sharp claws were directly torn apart by the black shadow, and he didn't even see what it was before it was directly swallowed. After swallowing it, Di Longtian returned to his original form and fell from the sky. He was dizzy and directly fainted. Perhaps he wasn't fated to die yet. Xia Ziluo noticed the battle from afar and quietly approached. When she saw that the one on the ground was actually Di Longtian, she hurriedly carried him away and quickly disappeared into the darkness. Chapter 11:14. In the pitch-black night, in the desolate space, other than the empty mountain range and the iron-like shrubs, there was only a slight breeze. Yi Qinghan led Xian Yain and Medusa to search for the disciples of the insane sect as well as the supreme god stones. In one day and one night, he had collected at least 350 supreme god stones. The divine bird and the little money grubber were about to collapse from exhaustion. However, Yi Qinghan had a smile on his face. His attitude towards them was much better than before. "Boss, is that enough? 350 is enough for you to sell." The divine bird cried out. It couldn't wait to return to its body to rest. The little money grubber directly went on strike. He would rather be beaten to death than to search for treasures. Yi Qinghan shrugged and decided to stop searching. He began to speed up and search for the experts in the space. He was prepared to kill some of the saint children of the sacred grounds and force them to buy the supreme god stones. Otherwise, they would be eliminated. Swoosh, swoosh. The three of them hurried forward. In such a large space, there were less than 400 people left. It wasn't easy for them to bump into each other. The sky gradually brightened. Outside a spacious desert, people from the 5 major powers were gathered. They were facing each other with killing intent. Sky Overlord led 7 experts from the space-time sacred ground to the south. Ji Tianshan Martial King led 6 followers from the Karma sacred ground and Ji Tianshan Demon Goddess to the north. Demon God Mountain's Dark Knight Demon God and 4 top experts from the Demon God Mountain were in the east. Vermilion Bird Battle God Huotianhe led a powerful Saint Beast to the west. There were 4 people standing in the middle, their backs facing each other as they vigilantly looked around. They were Li Feng, Jiang Jingtian, Gu Qingyu, and Zi Xian. They were very unlucky. They were surrounded by people from all directions and didn't dare to move. At this time, they could only trust their own people. Dark Knight Demon God Yikuan's eyes were filled with evil qi. His mouth revealed a trace of confidence and arrogance. His eyes were so evil that people didn't dare to look at them directly. His lips were black, very different from his previous good-for-nothing appearance. People from the insane sect. Yikuan grinned. His hoarse and sharp voice gave people goosebumps. They didn't know what his attitude was, but the way he looked at Gu Qingyu was clearly different. His murderous intent was soaring to the sky. Qin Wenin furrowed his brows and looked at Yikuan with dissatisfaction. He coldly said, "They are my uncles, don't act recklessly." "I know, they are my brothers." Haha. Yikuan laughed maniacally. What? Qin Wenin was too young and did not know about the relationship between Yi Qinghan and Yikuan. At this moment he was somewhat puzzled. Yi Qinghan is my brother, and they are my brother's subordinates. How can I not give them face? Yi Qinghan's eyes flashed coldly. No one knew if he was resenting Yi Qinghan or if he really cared about their brotherhood. No wonder Yi Qinghan wanted to find out if the Dark Knight Devil Lord had returned to the Devil God Mountain. So it turned out that they were blood brothers. The 5 powers did not act rashly for the time being. Each of them had about the same number of people. Although the insane sect had fewer people and their geographical location was not good, they had good equipment and strong combat strength. The 4 of them were not weak, they were all top experts. As a goddess, Zixian's cultivation was the weakest. Zixian moved the divine weapon in her hand and stared at Qin Wenin. She said crisply, "Wenin, shall we cooperate?" Qin Wenin nodded without hesitation. However, Yikuan groaned. No one knew what he was thinking. Gu Qingyu stared at Yikuan and gripped the divine sword in his hand. He said hoarsely, "Yikuan, if you really treat me as your brother, don't act rashly. No matter what grudges we have, we are still a family. We can talk behind closed doors. Even if we can't reach an agreement, we can fight alone. There is no need to let outsiders take advantage of us." "Brother Qingyu, since you said we are a family, then we are a family for the time being. Let's cooperate today and talk about other things in the future." Yikuan sneered. Gu Qingyu did not trust Yikuan anymore. On the surface, they were cooperating, but in his heart, he had to be wary. Kuang Zong slowly approached the people of Demon God Mountain, but always maintained a certain distance. Martial King Ji Tianshan and Sky Overlord wanted to kill Kuang Zong. As long as they killed these people, Kuang Zong would suffer great losses, and Demon God Mountain would not be able to recover. The 2 sides quickly formed an alliance. Only Huotianhe's attitude was left. He was the Vermilion Bird Saint's son, and already had the prestige of a Saint Beast. Behind him, there were 4 powerful Vermilion Bird descendants. These 5 could decide the direction of the battle. Huotianhe looked at the battlefield coldly, as if he had no intention of interfering. He did not want to cooperate with any human. He did not trust them, nor was he willing to cooperate. If he really wanted to cooperate, he would choose the Saint Beast lineage. "Let's retreat." Huotianhe waved his hand. The 4 Vermilion Bird descendants soared into the sky. Flames burned the darkness as if it was daytime. Only 4 sides were left. In terms of numbers, Karma's sacred land and Time's sacred land obviously had the advantage. Therefore, they did not hesitate to kill Kwang Zong. Boom, 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 boom. 16 people joined forces. Kwang Zong only had 4. Adding the 6 from Demon God Mountain, there was a difference of 5. 5 powerful King Realm elites were enough to turn the situation around. Boom. 15 people were engaged in a chaotic battle. They flew into the sky, burrowed into the ground, and tore apart the darkness. The supreme divine might was vast and mighty. Unparalleled saint-grade secret arts shone for thousands of miles, shaking the heaven and earth. A Chilant's roar resounded through the mountains and rivers. All of them used their full strength. Time and space were distorted. The Sky Overlord controlled the situation above, suppressing the experts until they could not fly. They were suppressed from beginning to end. Jiang Jingtian's long spear pierced through the sky and rushed into the clouds, wanting to kill the Sky Overlord. Gu Qingyu and Mo Li were each fighting against 2 powerful experts. Although they had stabilized the situation, they could not kill the opponent. Everyone was a King Realm expert, and no one could kill them with one sword. Swoosh, 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 swoosh. The sword light swept across, cutting open the void. However, the stable void quickly recovered. Ji Tianshan Martial King's power was overwhelming. The Karma Dao exploded. It seemed like everyone's attack and the trajectory of their next move appeared in his sea of consciousness. It was hard for anyone to escape from his control. He alone suppressed Zixian. Even if she used her foundation and locked down the sky with her eyes, she could not trap him. Zixian, you refuse a toast only to drink a forfeit. Since Purple Saint is not willing to kill you, I will kill you for him. Ji Tianshan Martial King's power was like a great rock spreading its wings. Zixian's eyes shone with 2 beams of light. Everywhere it passed, the world's laws would be sealed. However, she could not catch the trajectory of Ji Tianshan Martial King. She could only retreat and wait for the right opportunity. On Demon God Mountain, Yi Kuan did not seem to be willing to use his strength. He was always fighting against an expert. His opponent was intimidated by his aura, and his hair stood on end. However, every time he made a move, he could block his attacks. However, Ji Tianshan Martial King's order did not involve himself. Occasionally, his eyes would sweep past the battle between Jiang Jingtian and the Sky Overlord. It seemed like he wanted to interfere in the battle between the 2. The battle here was earth-shattering. It could be clearly sensed from hundreds of miles away. Yi Qinghan also noticed the dazzling radiance here. He brought Medusa and Xian Yan with him and quickly approached. Chapter 11:15. Boom. The chaotic battle between over 20 people was already equivalent to 10% of a paramount god's strength. Such explosive power made the experts from the various powers not dare to get too close. The 4 experts from the insane sect held back close to 10 experts. Unfortunately, Yi Kuan still didn't use his full strength. If it wasn't for Ji Tian having other ideas, the insane sect and Devil God Mountain would definitely suffer a great loss. Jiang Jingtian erupted with all his strength, entering a frenzied battle with the Sky Overlord. He almost didn't use any defense and attacked with all his might. The Sky Overlord was torn to pieces by him and then quickly recovered. The Sky Overlord was indeed strong. Even with Jiang Jingtian's strong attacks, he could still maintain the battle situation. The time and space scripture was used to the point of perfection in his hands. Even in this special high-grade space, he could still distort time and space, causing the majority of Jiang Jingtian's strength to dissipate. Martial King Ji Tianshan had an overwhelming advantage in controlling the situation. Zixian's defeat was something that would happen sooner or later. However, he was still struggling bitterly. Qin Wenyin was fighting 1 against 2. His figure shuttled through space as fast as lightning, unstoppable. If it wasn't for the fact that the rocks in this space were too hard, he could even pass through them. Boom! Qin Wentian's palm shattered the armor of one of the experts and then kicked him into the ground. A king-level expert fainted on the spot. However, the other one was closing in quickly, so Qin Wenyin could only give up on killing him. However, the advantage of the ethereal physique was already displayed. Her combat strength was far superior to some of the godsons. Whoosh! Qin Wenyan flashed and appeared in midair, dodging the attacks of the powerful godsons. Seeing that Yi Kuan was still fighting and wasn't willing to put in any effort, he couldn't help but be angry. Dark Knight Demonic God, what the hell are you doing? The opponent is so strong. Yi Kuan casually pushed back his opponent and said indifferently. Qin Wenyan was so angry that his body trembled. He didn't expect Yi Qinghan to have such a younger brother. Trash will always be trash. You will never be able to raise your head. Qin Wenyan coldly reprimanded. Yi Kuan's eyes flashed as he coldly looked at Qin Wenyan. Qin Wenyan, I'm not your subordinate. So what if you have the ethereal physique? Back then I, Dark Knight Demonic God, was the strongest under the great demonic god. Watch your mouth. The incorporeal physique, the Dark Knight Devil God, was the right-hand man of the great demonic god. He was the one with the strongest battle prowess and had a very good relationship with Qin Wenyan in the past. Unfortunately, it was Yi Kuan who wanted to suppress Qin Wenyan. Now, the old members of the demonic god mountain were also divided into two groups. Emoli was so angry that he couldn't do anything about it. Perhaps Yi Qinghan's decision back then was right. Yi Kuan was a scourge no matter where he went. It was better to let him go than to kill him. Qin Wenyan had no choice but to kill his way towards the enemies again, buying time for the 4 from the Kuang sect. As for the 4 from the demon god mountain, 3 of them were followers of the Dark Knight Demonic God's inheritance, so they didn't contribute much. At most, they could only delay one of them. Gu Qingyu and Li Feng were under more and more pressure. They were already 1 against 3. Although they could preserve their lives, it was impossible for them to take the initiative to attack, let alone save Zixian. Zixian's body glowed with golden light. His eyes were overflowing with blood. He wanted to use a forbidden technique to fight to the death with Martial King Ji Tianxian. At the very least, he wanted to take away half of Martial King Ji Tianxian's life. However, at this moment, a shadow appeared in the distance, tearing the darkness apart. Swish, swish, swish. A shadow descended from the sky. He was still 100 miles away from the battlefield. He directly waved his hand, forming a sky-covering palm imprint. It was as if he wanted to imprison the space. Everyone felt a desolate aura enveloping them, as if it wanted to destroy the universe. Everything in the world would fall into desolation and return to the era before the primordial chaos. Heaven Desolation Technique. Yi Qinghan's palm shattered the shackles of time and space. He went straight for Martial King Ji Tianxian's head. Boom, boom. In a split second, the sky collapsed and the earth cracked. Sand and pebbles flew everywhere. The tiny pebbles became the sharpest divine weapons. You're courting death. Yi Qinghan appeared 50 miles away in the blink of an eye. The giant palm imprint slammed down. Everyone had to scatter to avoid the aftershock of the palm. Everyone was overjoyed. They knew that this was Yi Qinghan's Heaven Desolation Technique attack. Only he could release such a terrifying desolate aura. Time and space flowed. Many experts felt as if they were facing death. Their lives were about to come to an end, and even the sky was about to turn old and desolate. This was especially true for Sky Overlord and Martial King Ji Tianxian. Only people at their level would understand how strong someone was to be able to kill them from a distance of 100 miles. Bang! A palm landed on Martial King Ji Tianxian's head. He couldn't dodge and could only retaliate. Boom! The two palms collided. The powerful Martial King Ji Tianxian's body fell from the sky like a kite with a broken string. Yi Qinghan's figure paused. He swept up Xian Yan and Medusa and appeared on the battlefield. Yi Kuan's expression changed. He didn't expect to meet Yi Qinghan here. He wasn't afraid of anyone, including the successor of the great demonic god, Emoli. He was afraid of Gu Qingyu, but he was afraid of his brother. It was respect and fear that came from the bottom of his heart. Yi Qinghan looked around and found Yi Kuan. He noticed that the evil aura in Yi Kuan's eyes was somewhat uncontrollable. A trace of anger flashed in his eyes. Brother, Yi Kuan was much more obedient. However, his arrogance couldn't be concealed. Yi Qinghan stared at Yi Kuan and said sternly, You didn't take the opportunity to deal with my people. It seems like you've grown up over the years. No matter how much I don't accept you, we're still family. When we get out of the supreme space, I'll still find you for another round. I don't believe that I'll lose to you again. Yi Kuan said firmly. Yi Qinghan shook his head and stepped into the center of the battlefield. Zixian exhaled a mouthful of turbid air and wiped the essence blood from the corner of his eyes. He had dodged a calamity. At this moment, Jiang Jingtian started to counterattack aggressively. However, the Sky Overlord had the intention to retreat. At this moment, they no longer had the advantage in numbers. If they continued to fight, they would all die. However, Martial King Ji Tianxin was targeted by Yi Qinghan. He crushed the rocks under his feet and punched out. Boom, boom, boom. Yi Qinghan's punch shattered the space and appeared in front of Martial King Ji Tianxin. You're dead, Yi Qinghan said domineeringly. That's not necessarily true. Martial King Ji Tianxin swallowed a drop of diluted divine energy. Instantly, his explosive strength increased by more than 10 times. He swept his leg and kicked towards Yi Qinghan's head. Close combat was Yi Qinghan's advantage. He retreated and turned his fist into a claw. He leaned his body and grabbed Martial King Ji Tianxin's long leg. The terrifying impact caused the golden armor to flutter. However, he retracted his left leg and used his right hand to throw Martial King Ji Tianxin away. Bang! Yi Qinghan twisted his leg and rushed out. He kicked Martial King Ji Tianxin's chest and sent him crashing into the mountain peak. His divine body was almost shattered. Martial King Ji Tianxin spat out a mouthful of essence blood and rolled down from the mountain peak. He looked at Yi Qinghan in shock. I said you're dead. Yi Qinghan raised his hand and was about to suppress Martial King Ji Tianxin. The surrounding experts felt their limbs turn cold. Even Li Feng and the rest felt that Yi Qinghan's battle strength was a little too strong. Chapter 11:16. Yi Qinghan raised his hand, and the power of the world rose with a wave of his hand. It was like a supreme will that could suppress all living things. Martial King Ji Tianxin was shocked. He directly swallowed a drop of pure supreme godly power. The aura of karma covered the sky, and his figure disappeared as if all karma had appeared. Shua! Martial King Ji Tianxin appeared dozens of meters behind Yi Qinghan with a golden sword in his hand. The Karma Dao formed a golden path to the heavens. The supreme godly power was abnormally dense, circulating around his body. His golden body emitted an oppressive golden light, as if a true supreme god had appeared. The foundation of a supreme holy ground had appeared. This was the difference between them and the top elites. They could still explode with their foundation and display their supreme godly might. They could even erupt with supreme godly power. I'm dead for sure? Yi Qinghan. Today I'll kill you. Martial King Ji Tianxin grinned coldly, his killing intent soaring to the sky. Yi Qinghan's eyes flashed coldly. His right foot slipped and the sand and stones flew. After the heaven desolation technique starting stance, the desolate aura of heaven and earth gathered, and Berserk appeared in his hand. The power of desolation attached to Berserk, and the saber light became even more soul-stealing. The sharp auras collided, and no one dared to stand within 1,000 meters. Even Sky Overlord hid far away, waiting for an opportunity to escape. The 4 from the Karma Sacred Land and the 6 from the Spacetime Sacred Land were all blocked off by the Insane Sect and Demon God Mountain. Their numbers were about the same, and with Ji Tian's demon spirit still hoping that Yi Qinghan would kill Ji Tianxin Martial King, Blue Sky Overlord and the others were at an even greater disadvantage. A sharp light flashed in Ji Tian's eyes. He couldn't wait for Yi Qinghan to kill King Shenwu. Once King Shenwu died, his supreme source energy would be distributed to the other godsons of the Karma Holy Land. She would then replace King Shenwu and become the strongest goddess of the Karma Holy Land. After killing the other godsons and goddesses, she would be able to gather the Karma Overgod source energy and become a paramount god. She would be invincible in the same realm. Yi Qinghan obviously wouldn't disappoint her. However, what he wanted to cultivate wasn't Ji Tian, but Ji Tianling as a puppet. Boom! Yi Qinghan took a step forward, and the hard stones under his feet were crushed. Whoosh! Yi Qinghan slashed his saber towards Martial King Ji Tianxin. His body was like a rainbow sword, and the stone beneath his feet was directly shattered. Saber Qi, accompanied by the terrifying power of Desolates, cut open the space. Martial King Ji Tianxin sneered arrogantly. Ding! The golden sword was swift and fierce, slicing through space as it slashed towards Zhong Kuang. Supreme God Force poured out, and Zhong Kuang's entire body burned. A streak of desolation energy collided with the Supreme God Force, causing the astral river to surge. Gravel flew up into the sky, shooting into the distant mountain peak. The mountain peak was pierced through. Boom! Yi Qinghan's power reached its peak. The veins on his body bulged as he slammed his saber against the golden sword. The sound of the collision was ear-piercing. The power of desolation crushed Ji Tianxin Martial King's Supreme God Force with overwhelming dominance. Bang! Thud! Thud! Martial King Ji Tianxin's arms went numb, and his legs involuntarily took a few steps back. His legs were almost broken. Ah! Martial King Ji Tianxin screamed miserably. He couldn't accept that even after using all his trump cards, he still couldn't contend against Yi Qinghan. His Supreme God Force actually lost to the opponent's power of desolation. Die! Yi Qinghan didn't retreat. Instead, he advanced. The moment the tip of his feet touched the ground, he fiercely stomped on the ground and soared into the sky. He raised his saber and once again sliced through space, wanting to kill Martial King Ji Tianxin. The desolation light screen descended from the sky. Yi Qinghan transformed into a great rock and swooped down. Borrowing the power of heaven and earth, Martial King Ji Tianxin couldn't escape. He could only forcefully resist. Clang! Boom! Boom! After a crisp sound, Martial King Ji Tianxin's golden sword bent and changed shape. Yi Qinghan ruthlessly pressed down, and Martial King Ji Tianxin's knees crashed onto the ground. His kneecaps smashed into the ground, shattering the ground and shattering the bones in his legs. Martial King Ji Tianxin's eyes almost popped out. He knelt on the ground and raised his sword to resist. His body was bent under the pressure. His Supreme God Force poured out in torrents, but he still couldn't block Yi Qinghan's 7-feet-long saber and the strength of his arms. Sky Overlord looked at Yi Qinghan in horror and whispered hoarsely, "How is this possible? He used all his trump cards." Yi Qinghan's strength was indeed too terrifying. The 9-revolution Chaos Dao body was almost completed, and he also had the dragon blood and dragon physique. Just this body alone was a peak giant god. The power of desolation was the power system of the Lord of Desolation. Naturally, it wouldn't lose to the Supreme God Force. Now that he was suppressing Martial King Ji Tianxin, it wasn't a big deal. Moreover, Martial King Ji Tianxin was far from being on par with the top-tier godsons. Yi Qinghan looked down at Martial King Ji Tianxin, who was kneeling in front of him. He lifted his leg and kicked right at Martial King Ji Tianxin's chest. Bang! Poof! Martial King Ji Tianxin's back bulged, and his chest caved in. His internal organs were almost crushed by the kick. His body flew backward and slammed into a mountain rock. He fell to the ground and didn't have a chance to fight back. "I said you're dead for sure. You wasted a drop of Supreme God Force for nothing. In the end, you didn't even use 10% of its power." Yi Qinghan shook his head in pity. Rustle, rustle, rustle. Yi Qinghan stepped towards Martial King Ji Tianxin. He crushed his powerful body with a stomp and chopped off his head with a slash. His godhead shattered on the spot, and a top-tier god's son died. At the moment of his death, the Supreme Source dissipated, splitting into several parts and disappearing in the air. The largest part directly rushed into Ji Tianxin's sea of consciousness. His aura changed drastically, and his battle strength increased by more than a few times. Yi Qinghan snatched the yin-yang ring from Martial King Ji Tianxin's hand. After recognizing it as its owner, he found that there was still a drop of Supreme God Force inside. Moreover, it was very pure. As for the resources inside, he naturally took all of them. Sky Overlord's scalp went numb. He narrowed his eyes and stared at Yi Qinghan as he continuously retreated. "Since you're already here, why are you so eager to leave?" Leave the gifts behind before you leave. Yi Qinghan said indifferently. Sky Overlord carried a bag on his back. It was clearly filled with supreme godstones. There were close to 20 of them. Ji Tianxin also had a bag on his back, which was even more than his. The two of them had at least 50 of them. This was something that all of them gathered together. Sky Overlord naturally wasn't willing to hand it over. This was 20 points. If he gave it to Yi Qinghan, where would he find so many supreme godstones? Ji Tianxin frowned and looked at Jiang Jingtian, hoping that he would say something. After all, she also wanted to make a contribution so that her family could nurture her. Yi Qinghan saw Ji Tianxin's little movements and looked at Jiang Jingtian suspiciously. He secretly knew what was going on and said to Sky Overlord, "You won't be able to escape. If you don't want to leave behind the supreme godstones, the few of you will meet up with Martial King Ji Tianxin in hell." Sky Overlord was being stared at by Jiang Jingtian and didn't have any chance to escape. Now that Yi Qinghan was here, there was even less of a chance. He could only choose to compromise. "If we leave behind the supreme godstones, you will let us go?" Sky Overlord frowned and asked. Yi Qinghan shrugged and smiled, "Of course. Because I still have business to discuss with you." The supreme godstones that they snatched naturally had to be sold. Otherwise, what was the point of having so many supreme godstones? It was useless. Chapter 11:18. Time passed even faster on the second day. The competition for the supreme divine stones had reached its climax, and people were killed at every turn. Some people had no choice but to abandon the divine stones and flee in order to save their lives. Emperor Yi rode the White Tiger Descendant for a day and night without making a move. On the second day, he sat upright and played the guqin. The White Tiger Descendant was intoxicated by the music, and his blood energy became stronger and stronger, showing signs of evolution. The melodious music of the guqin spread out, affecting the blood energy of the experts within 1,000 miles. They danced along with the music, and their battle intent became stronger and stronger. It was as if they had entered a state of enlightenment. Their spiritual awareness was clear, and their understanding of martial arts was rapidly improving. Thus, many people couldn't help but approach. They knew that the music came from Emperor Yi, but they still wanted to get closer and take advantage of it. They thought that as long as they didn't get too close, Emperor Yi wouldn't be able to catch up. But when they got within 100 miles, their hearts didn't want to get closer, but their bodies were very honest. The closer they got to Emperor Yi, the greater the benefits. Thus, the temptation was limitless. The crisp and melodious sound of the guqin reverberated through the air for thousands of miles without dissipating. The heavenly melody of the guqin rushed into the depths of the Overlord's consciousness. It was as if they had fallen into a dreamland, a beautiful dream that Renhuang Yi had woven for them. More and more experts gathered around the White Tiger Descendant. Xia Ziluo heard Emperor Ye's music and also quickly approached with Di Longtian on her back. Many experts were carrying the supreme divine stones on their backs. When they were more than 10 miles away from Emperor Yi, they couldn't control themselves and had completely entered Emperor Ye's dream. Emperor Yi gently played the divine guqin, and it was similar to Zixian's forbidden technique. Entering dream technique. Soul, spirit, enter my dream. Wind moon guide me. All living things, enter my dream. There's no struggle, only my dream. Everyone threw down the supreme divine stones and swept away the White Tiger Descendant one by one, leaving nothing behind. Soon, Emperor Yi had collected more than 100 divine stones by himself. More than 30 people had been robbed. It involved almost everyone from the Holy Lands. By the time they came to their senses, Renhuang Yi had already succeeded. Everyone was an overlord of a region and a group of heroes. How could they swallow this insult? They all glared at Renhuang Yi and drew their swords. Emperor Yi stood with his zither in his arms. His white robes fluttered in the wind, making him look like a delicate lowly. He looked at the crowd with his big watery eyes. However, the compass's speed was extremely fast, and it always dodged the guqin music's attacks. It was getting closer and closer to Emperor Yi. Chapter 11:19. Emperor Yi plucked at the strings of the guqin with his 10 fingers and pushed them forward fiercely, pressing the strings in reverse. A wave of melodic qi filled the sky and formed a gigantic chaotic dragon. It was vivid and lifelike, and its might overflowed into the sky. It opened its mouth and enveloped the compass. Ji Wuhan felt that the compass could tear this attack apart, so he charged forward. However, when the compass was controlled by the dragon's teeth, he realized that his divine power was actually on par with Emperor Yi's. He could not break free from the dragon's restraint. Boom! The dragon beneath Emperor Yi swung its tail and attacked Ji Wuhan's body. The speed at which his fingers plucked the strings of the guqin was extremely fast. The sound blades formed by the rhythmic sorcery swept through the air, forcing Ji Wuhan to flee frantically. He always managed to dodge the attack when it was just a hair's breadth away. His battle robe was cut open, and he was forced to retreat. Chaos reappears, Nirvana 10 directions. Boom! Ji Wuhan mobilized the primal chaos 10 directions. A drop of diluted primal chaos supreme divine power rushed into his body. It then turned into usable primal chaos divine power and poured out, forming an even larger primal chaos compass in front of him. In an instant, the world rumbled as the sound blades touched the primal chaos compass. The sound blades shattered and the compass dimmed. Ji Wuhan still could not control the situation and retreated. The sound of space shattering resounded for thousands of miles. The battle here shook half of the supreme space. Primal chaos scripture, all things return to origin. Ji Wuhan's eyes shone brightly as golden light appeared in his body. The phantom of the compass rushed out of his body and imprinted itself on the giant primal chaos compass in front of him. Its aura suddenly increased, and all the power in front of the compass returned to nothingness and was added to the compass. Ji Wuhan's aura suddenly increased, and the situation turned around. He grabbed the compass and danced with the river. The space and rocks within a radius of several miles began to shatter. The supreme divine power appeared for the first time. It was at least 1% of a supreme god's power. 10,000 arrows returned to 1. Azure Dragon goes to sea. Emperor Yi's figure suddenly rose, and the primal chaos supreme divine guqin turned into a divine bow. The divine power in his body was instantly exhausted, and it turned into an Azure Dragon divine arrow. Creak creak. The ultimate colossus was almost torn apart. Emperor Yi's dragon might spread for thousands of kilometers, as if the supreme being had appeared and looked down on all living beings, suppressing more than half of the supreme space. The dragon god's arrow was formed. The arrowhead trembled slightly and spread out millions of kilometers. It supported Yi Qinghan's aura, wanting to destroy time and space. Mo Li did not want to be enemies with Yi Qinghan at this moment, so he took the initiative to leave. They were teammates, so no one gossiped. Once Mo Li left, Hua Tianhe naturally did not stay. Sacred beasts were not interested in humans. With so many human experts gathered here, what else could he do? In any case, he would not join forces with a human to fight another human. Everyone hesitated. The son of chaos, Ji Wuhan, must have lost his mind. He fought against Emperor Yi at this moment and caused both sides to suffer. He was probably running around like a dog, looking for a place to recover. Once he was discovered by an expert of the same level, he would not even have a chance to escape. They did not want to die. They did not want to suffer another loss with Yi Qinghan, which would only benefit others. They all left the battlefield preparing to find another opportunity. Yi Qinghan waved his hand, and the overlords retreated. Only Xia Ziluo, the White Tiger's descendant, and Nangong Yunlan were left. Yi Qinghan turned to look at Di Longtian. He found that the divine power in his body was extremely chaotic, and his blood was flowing non-stop. He could not help but frown. He raised his hand and grabbed Di Longtian. He found that his imprint was actually the imprint of the Azure Dragon Overgod. The Overgod's spark was slowly gathering. How can this be? If he is the inheritor of the Azure Dragon Overgod, then what is going on with the Azure Dragon Saint Child? Yi Qinghan murmured. Nangong Yunlan was also quite shocked. It was obviously impossible for two supreme inheritors to appear. There had to be strong ones and weak ones. Di Longtian's cultivation was obviously not weak, and the Azure Dragon Saint Child's strength was even more obvious. Who was the inheritor chosen by the Azure Dragon over God? Yi Qinghan did not know much about supreme inheritances. He was naturally happy that Di Longtian had grown to become the inheritor of the Azure Dragon over God. At least Di Shang's painstaking nurturing had not been wasted. Emperor Yi had recovered for about 3 hours. His strength had returned to peak condition. Now that he stood up, his battle power had increased by a lot. A battle between experts of the same level was indeed extraordinary. The White Tiger's descendant followed Emperor Yi closely, as if it was afraid that he would lose sight of it. Even when Emperor Yi asked it to leave, it was unwilling to leave. It seemed that it wanted to follow Emperor Yi and use the zither music to improve its bloodline. The descendant of a holy beast was indeed intelligent. Even if its bloodline was not pure, it was still smarter than the average person. Yi Qinghan looked around and found that the beast tamer factions Xinyuan Lu and the insane sects Nye Tian had not gathered yet. There was also no trace of Nangong Yunao from the Holy Land. He could not help but frown. Let's gather everyone first. We have enough supreme godstones, so there's no need to fight anymore. Life is the most important thing, Yi Qinghan said in a low voice. Thank you, Lord Wuxin, for flashing red twice. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.